Sure, Jared's easier. Yeah, but that's the whole thing. He doesn't challenge.
Nah, Steven is fake as fuck for this, honestly. And I know that the scene only exists to kind of represent like Team Jeremiah and Team Conrad within the fandom. But I just have a couple things to say. Because why is Steven being such a shit friend to Jeremiah? Like, I need Jeremiah to wake up and realize you cannot trust these people. This guy is not your friend, okay? Because the fact that Steven sees Jeremiah as just this like superficial, surface level person honestly kind of sucks. Like, that is not best friend material. And I hate that they push this notion that Conrad challenges Belly. You know what he challenges? Her patience and her tolerance for being treated poorly. Like, this is such a toxic view into just saying that, like, if you work through that toxicity in a relationship, it's going to be worth it on the other side. I hate this because why is the fact that like Jeremiah is easier bad? Personally, I think my romantic relationships should be easy. It should be easier to work with that person, and I shouldn't have to go through all this drama every time we just want to have a conversation. An underrated part as to why I think Taylor is Team Jeremiah is because she has seen all the ways that Conrad has hurt Belly. She's heard it from Belly herself. She's been there. Belly's told her about it. But Steven doesn't have that, even though the little he does have, he's seen Conrad hurting her. But I guess all the times of Jeremiah being there for Belly, showing up for her, taking her to the dead ball, weren't enough to convince him that Jeremiah is a serious person as well.
Don't you just love when they cast two straight actors to play two gay characters when there's a ton of gay actors out there that are looking for roles but are told there's no roles for them?
Immediately the vibe of this video is off.
I was told to stay in the closet and be more like Taylor. And now Taylor gets to be a gay character in a movie.
One, Taylor's character is bisexual, a half Mexican bisexual character.
And for anyone saying that this is not that big of a deal and they don't owe us anything about their sexuality.
And they don't owe you anything about their sexuality. I thought the atrocity that was Kate Connor's situation would have taught us this.
Queer baiting, in my opinion, is unnecessary and totally avoidable, which is what this movie is doing.
Queer baiting? Queer baiting. Y'all, I just had to take a hot second to walk this off. Queer baiting. Let's go to the dictionary, shall we? Queer baiting. The incorporation of apparently gay characters, and I don't need to read any more of that because characters was the operative word there. Taylor Zakar Perez and Nicholas Galitzine are real people. They are not characters. And therefore, maintaining any kind of ambiguity about their sexuality isn't queerbaiting. The audacity to say that this movie is queerbaiting. You know what is queerbaiting? Stiles and Derek in Teen Wolf. The actors who played those characters actually said their ship names several times during interviews and promos in a way that implied they were going to get together. And they never did. In fact, both of them ended up in straight relationships. Accusations of queerbaiting are what led to Kit Connor being outed before he was ready, at 18. Do not misuse this word, ever.
Because these actors are afforded the privilege to say that they don't like to talk about their personal lives, so that they get to use this queer moment.
That isn't a privilege. That's a right. They have the right to say that.
Hollywood has no problem shutting the door over on queer movies, queer characters, queer anything.
Okay, I will semi-agree with this, but I will say that it is getting better. We are seeing more representation every day, hence this movie.
But has no problem taking two straight cute boys and using them to sell a gay movie. Make it make sense.
That actually makes perfect sense, because it doesn't matter what the sexuality of the actors are. As long as they can accurately portray their characters, doesn't matter. It's almost like they're acting. And on the sexuality note, both Taylor and Nick have portrayed characters of varying sexualities. And I, for one, don't know what their sexualities are. I don't know if they've made statements about this, and I'm not gonna look for it. I guess my question is, how do you know they're straight? Okay, y'all, it's accountability time. In case you didn't see, I made a response video. I figured it would get some kind of response, but I wasn't sure what kind of response that would be, nor did I anticipate how big it was going to get. Currently, it's sitting at 1.1 million views, and while I am thrilled with that kind of exposure, especially on such an important topic, the side effects that have come along with that we need to address. So the original video that I was reacting to was made by a creator named Barrett. He took his original video down, which at the time of my posting, I did not know, so that is on me. But just within the last few hours, he's posted an update/apology video. And while he didn't specifically call me out in it, which I do appreciate, if you've seen my video, you can make some connections pretty quickly. A very minor side note, but in his comment section, he did write that this was my first over 1 million view video. It is not. I have a video that's over 4 million views, which shouldn't be that big of a note, but we could have phrased this better. It's very minor, but it still is misinformation and very misleading. So let's try for accountability across all spectrums. Again, very minor side note, so let's move on. In his apology video, he stated that people are now coming and attacking him and harassing him. Y'all, I can't believe that I have to say this, but that is not appropriate, nor is it okay, in any circumstance. He said that people have been telling him to off himself. In no world is that kind of behavior something I will ever support. My intent with my video was to bring awareness about a specific issue as a whole. And that issue is a symptom of a much larger problem. It's also worth mentioning, I did not react to his whole video. There are significant portions of it that I did not address because I felt that I would not do these topics justice if I tried to shove them all in one video. Now, it is my personal opinion that the parts I cut out do not in any way change the perspective or lens on the parts that I did respond to. But as I will always say, you should never put your opinion out on the internet unless you are prepared to 1, be criticized, 2, be proven wrong, and 3, have to apologize. I will stand by my response, but I will also acknowledge the need for accountability because I wasn't as transparent about this as I could have been. It wasn't something I was thinking about at the time, but with his apology now up and the things that I am now hearing, it is needed. So Barrett, I apologize if my video acted in a catalyst towards this harassment in any way. That was never my intention. I appreciate your apology and I offer my own in return. It's an opportunity to grow and learn for sure. Whoa! So apparently we still have tons of unresolved tension in my comment section. I haven't written a list anywhere, so forgive me if I go off track a little bit at any point. Starting at the very top, the most common dissenting opinion that I saw was that I had taken his video out of context and that I wasn't focusing on the issues he wanted to talk about. Y'all, I specifically did not address the parts of his video that I didn't have a problem with. I completely agree that currently LGBTQ actors have a harder time finding and being given opportunities, especially in the entertainment industry. Which is why I never addressed that topic in my response video. In terms of taking his video out of context, I do not believe that the parts I cut out can in any way change how someone looks at the clips that I used. Those are still very problematic regardless of the fact that that was not the main point of his video. I said this in the comment, but explicitly calling out Taylor Zaccar Perez and then following that up by saying this isn't about the actors is like saying no offense when you've already offended someone. Just saying this isn't about the actors doesn't undo any potential harm you just caused. Which is why I felt the need to address it in the first place. So yes, I actually did watch his full video, but I disagree that anything I responded to was taken out of context. Moving on, I saw a lot of people commenting that I don't have the right to have an opinion because I'm not a gay man. My general opinion is that anyone should be welcome to having a conversation. We should be trying to include people instead of exclude people, because exclusion is the base for so much of the hate we see in the world. But addressing those comments, I am a member of the LGBTQ community. In fact, I am a member of a much smaller demographic than gay or lesbian. So if you really want to talk about representation in the media, I would argue that my sexuality actually needs to be seen more. Because if we really look at it, Gay people actually get the most LGBTQ representation out of any other sexuality. So if you really want to get all high and mighty about it, let's go do that. See how that ends up for you. Oh my god, it's a time jump, because I had to go to work like a normal person. Anyway, where was I? Ah yes, queer representation in the media. Something I also mentioned in the comments, which is a huge core belief of mine, representation should come from characters first and actors second. If an actor chooses to be representation for their community, then that's great, we love to see it. But we shouldn't be forcing people out of the closet to get that representation, and we should never be putting normal humans on pedestals they didn't ask to be put on. And if you try and say, well, they're famous, they asked for it, I would say that most actors become actors out of love of acting, not to become famous, although I'm sure that's a perk, as well as the boatloads of money. So if we come at this from the perspective that our representation is coming from the characters and not the actors themselves, then it would make sense to accept any actor who can accurately portray the characters who are representing us. Just because you are an LGBTQ actor does not mean you'd be good at portraying an LGBTQ character. One does not go in hand with the other. I would rather know that my character is going to be accurately portrayed versus know that the actor behind it is queer. On this point, I saw a lot of people trying to equate blackface and whitewashing to this queer topic. I can't believe I have to say that these are completely unrelated. Apart from the fact that they stem from a fear of the unknown and a lack of understanding, they're unrelated. Despite what many people in the comments were trying to suggest, you cannot look at someone and know that they have some level of queerness about them. You just can't. You might say you have a pretty accurate gaydar, and that might work for you. But as a whole, a human cannot look at another human and go, yes, 100% gay. Some of the comments I saw in my video just go to prove this, because I cannot tell you how many people assumed that I was a straight white woman. You got 67% of that correct. I identify as biromantic asexual, but you don't know that just by looking at me. On the other hand, you can look at someone and be pretty sure about what their ethnicity is. Now, can you get it wrong? Absolutely. Especially when someone is mixed. And when that mistake is made, the only thing you can do is acknowledge you made a mistake, apologize, and move on. But race is something you can tell when you look at someone. So absolutely, it is not okay for a white person to portray a black character, or vice versa, or any other combination of races. Another version of this argument I saw was about characters with disabilities and actors who have those disabilities. In terms of how important it is to have an actor who has the disability they are portraying, I would put that above queerness in level of importance, but below race. Simply because the disability being portrayed might not have an actor who has that disability, but also because some disabilities would prevent someone from being comfortable or okay making a movie in general. So in those instances, it's probably better to have someone who can do an imitation of the disability rather than have someone who actually has the disability. Again, because accuracy is important. So I would say that any movie that has a disabled character, it would be more important to have someone on staff that could make sure the portrayals are accurate, rather than actually having someone with a disability portraying that character. If you can, by all means have it. I think that's really important. But again, I think its level of importance falls directly in the middle of race and queerness. And I could be totally wrong for thinking that. But I have yet to have anyone provide any anecdotes or data that would suggest that my viewpoint currently is incorrect or harmful. So if you do have that information, I would love to see it. I think opportunities to learn and grow and change your mind are super important. Now, to close out this video, I'm going to circle back to the first topic I covered, which was the only gay actors should portray gay characters conversation. I think that viewpoint does a huge disservice to both queer and straight actors because you're boxing them in one way or another. You can't say only gay actors should portray gay characters and then not have the reverse of only straight actors should portray straight characters. So you've now just excluded queer actors from portraying anything other than queer characters. And if that is your logic, then you have to follow that all the way down the line. Only someone who's experienced poverty can portray a poor person. Only royalty can portray royalty. Only someone who's been to boot camp can play a soldier. And at that point, why even learn how to act at all? Why not just get the characters and historical figures to play themselves? It's a very silly argument. The solution to LGBTQ actors not having the same opportunities as straight actors is not exclusion, one way or another. I would argue that the solution somewhere has to be about inclusion. How do we get those opportunities to LGBTQ actors while still choosing the best actor for the roles? I think that is a far more important conversation to have than, again, only queer actors should play queer characters. Wow, this video is going to be over 8.5 minutes long. In conclusion, if you want to discuss these topics, by all means, go for it. But if you're going to do it in my comment section, I have a small caveat. And it definitely applies to any conversation you want to have in my comment section. Don't go into a discussion yelling and screaming because your ears are already closed. When the point of these discussions is not to see who can yell their opinion the loudest. The point of having any intellectual discussion or conversation is to be open to learning and potentially even changing your mind. It is really exhausting watching these arguments happen in my comment section when one person is trying to actually have an in-depth conversation and come with like facts and evidence, and the other is just trying to beat their opinion into the other person with a sledgehammer. Plus, most of us are perfect strangers on the internet. Don't be trying to call someone out as if you've known them for 20 years, unless you actually have known them for 20 years. Personal attacks are never okay. Name calling is just childish. And in the end, if someone walks away from a discussion that you're having, it doesn't mean that you won or that your opinion is correct. It could, but most of the time from what I saw, it just means that person is tired of talking in circles. This is now a 10-minute long video. Bye, I love you all. Have a good night.
So I don't know if liberals realize that Republicans are constantly speaking to each other in code out in public.
She really said we're so quirky. We use coded language and dog whistles. There are words for what you're talking about. Liberals know.
I have seen multiple people now say that they don't understand when people are ranking the Taylor albums. They don't understand when people rank Folklore and Evermore very differently because apparently they're like very similar. And I don't understand that because I really don't think they're very similar at all. And Folklore and Evermore rank really differently for me. I do kind of want to rank the albums, but I know that you all will roast me, but like whatever. But I do get how they're similar. Like I get that they're sister albums, but like they're so different. And I feel like if you ask people Folklore or Evermore, like people don't hesitate to tell you their answer because like they have one that they like a lot more. First of all, the vibes are entirely different. Folklore is like warm, wistful, summery, breeze off the ocean on a warm evening and like green grass and dunes on the beach. And Evermore obviously is like brittle winter, deep autumn, smells like oak moss and vintage perfume. And those vibes are very polarizing. And before any of you jump down my throat like Folklore is summery, girl, what? Taylor herself literally describes it as a spring and summer album. For me, Folklore fits best with like the entirety of summer and like the earliest days of fall. And like associate that with whatever season you want, but don't gaslight me into thinking that it's like not a summer album and that doesn't make sense. Like August, The Last Great American Dynasty, Sweet Tea in the Summer, and the sounds are so soft and summery, and Folklore is a lot more whimsical, whereas Evermore is a lot darker and richer, and it's clearly fall and winter. And like, just because something is like emotional or complex doesn't mean that it has to be like fall and winter. Like, be serious and look at the other images for Folklore. Like, they're all summery. Yes, she's wearing a coat on the cover, but please. And I feel like, well, this is not 100% of the time, obviously, people who love Evermore best tend to really like Red, and Folklore enthusiasts tend to really love Speak Now. And for me, like, an album like Evermore is probably not going to be my favorite. Well, I do think it's a beautiful album and I love it, but like Folklore obviously would. And for me, like, Folklore is like almost no skips, and Evermore, while it has like some of my all-time favorite songs, has like a fair amount of skips for me. So obviously they're gonna rank very differently, but do most people lump them together? I feel like they don't, but maybe they do. Said Folklore is almost a no-skip album for me, so what are my skips? I will gladly tell you, but I know irate Swifties are gonna jump down my throat anyway, because the Taylor fandom honestly is so rude for actually no reason. Like, it's kind of funny, but it's also sad, and like, you know that I'm used to that. Like, you all know what fandom I live in and where I stand, so I'm used to that, but wow, like, who spit in your Fruit Loops, Swifties? And 9 times out of 10, it's the person with no content and like a dog as their profile picture who has like the most insidious, hateful thing to say. Either that or like Lana Del Rey with that like fire background. And no offense to like nice people who have that profile picture, but like, be serious. I'm gonna start with the uncontroversial Epiphany, which I feel like a lot of people skip, which no offense, it just is what it is. More controversial is Exile, which I pretty much always skip. It really just does nothing for me. I don't love the sound, and I honestly just like don't love the Bon Iver collabs. Like, I don't know, I'm sorry. And I don't think it's a bad song. Like, I get why people like it, and like, if it's on like a vinyl, like, and it comes on, I don't get mad or anything. Like, I'll listen, but I'm not gonna choose to listen to Exile, you know? Next one, also controversial because I know it's such a fave, is Mirror Ball, but I will say that this has become a most of the time skip rather than an always skip. I was never really a fan of the sound. It felt like a little repetitive and boring to me, and the lyrics didn't hit hard enough for me to like it, but it has grown on me a little bit. And when I saw the videos of Taylor performing it live, I was like, wow, that's really pretty. I think maybe I would like an acoustic Mirror Ball better. So I usually skip it, but I don't think it's a bad song, and I do listen to it sometimes. And the last one is also a most of the time skip for me, Peace, which I know a lot of people love. Again, I have this thing where to me it just sounds like a little boring and repetitive, but I feel like this one might not have clicked with me yet, because that does happen to me a lot. I'll admit, like, it took such a long time for This Is Me Trying to click for me, and then it did, and now it's like one of my favorites. The One also took like a while to grow on me, and now I love it. And I feel like there's gotta be some reason why you all ride so hard for Peace. But either way, I am obviously a big fan of Folklore, and I think it's probably the hardest album to rank for me because almost every song feels so special that I feel like I'm ranking it too low. And I'm never doing this to be hateful or like try to be different. I'm simply discussing my thoughts like everyone else because I genuinely find this stuff interesting. I genuinely enjoy seeing other people's opinions and rankings and stuff because I think it's interesting how differently people interpret music and media in general. Like, I rank Hoax really high because I love it and I think it's so beautiful, and a lot of you are like, why is Hoax so high but you ride for Mirror Ball? And I don't think that makes you dumb. If you say something egregious like New Moon is the worst Twilight film, I might say not everyone has taste, because not everybody does, and that's okay, but some of you need to chill. Oh, you're not wrong. I actually only have one more skip on Evermore than I do on Folklore, but I feel like there is a scale to skips. Like I explained in that video, the skips I have on Folklore, only one of those is like a resolute skip. Most of those are like most of the time skips or sometimes skips. My Evermore skips are like firmer skips, and there's one sometimes skip. And I feel like these are gonna be more controversial than the Folklore ones. Number one is 'Tis the Damn Season. I always skip this one, and I know people love this song, and here's the thing, like, so many people have said to me, Corinne, you hate 'Tis the Damn Season? Like, that seems like a song you would like. And I feel like you're probably right. Just like something about it, the sound really did not click with me, and I just I didn't like it. I don't know. But maybe I have to revisit it. I don't know. Next is Happiness, and I don't always skip this one, but I would say like 99.9% of the times I skip it. I do think this is a good song, and I get why people like it, but it just doesn't do it for me. I like the bridge a lot, but the rest of it is just kind of like hard to get through for me. It's like depressing, but I don't like the sound enough for it to be like the good kind of depressing. I don't know. Third skip, Coney Island. This is another one of the collabs I just really don't like. Again, like the sound is just kind of like dark and boring to me, and the lyrics don't like hit hard enough for me to like it. But I know people love it. That could be a me problem. Next one I know is really controversial, Evermore. As you know, I really just do not like the Bon Iver collabs. It just does nothing for me. I don't like the way it sounds. I'm so sorry. And the last one is a song that I actually do really like. And this one is going to be the most controversial, Champagne Problems. Now, I do like this song. It's a great song. A lot of times, I really just can't, though. It just feels so heavy, and there's something, like, monotonous about it. And it's not even, like, because it's sad, because there are sad songs that I can listen to all the time. There's just something about it. It's just, like, a little too heavy, and I'm like, I can't. Especially the chorus. Like, it's just, like, not this. Only sometimes, though. And obviously, I think the bridge is great, but it's just too much sometimes. Does that make sense? Anyway, again, I do think Evermore is a beautiful album. I do prefer Folklore, but Evermore is beautiful, and some of my all-time favorite songs are on Evermore. I do like it. Okay, my skips on 1989. I do love this album, but I do have like kind of a lot of skips on this one. Also, first, every time we talk about 1989, I'm obligated to point this out because I've ruined this album cover for a lot of you. Where are Taylor's arms in this picture? Because I always thought that they were crossed like this, and I never saw the sleeves. Did you see it? Okay, first one is Mild. I feel like it's kind of a universal skip, no offense, Shake It Off. Doesn't everyone skip this? And I don't even hate on the mainstream singles like that. Like, I'm a me stan. I never skip me, but like this is just like, I can't. Next one, Welcome to New York. I feel like this one isn't that controversial. I feel like a lot of people skip this one too. It's not bad. I don't hate it, but I just don't really care to listen to it most of the time. Now we're veering into more dangerous territory with All You Had to Do Was Stay. I know people love this song. I just find it like really boring. I don't really like it. I don't love it, but this is still not my least favorite track 5. This was probably the most controversial. I know places I always skip this one. This song gives me the ick, and I can't exactly explain why. It's one of my least favorite Taylor Swift songs. I would actually like kind of like a restraining order against this song, but I will say you never know because I have 2 songs on this album that recently made it out of skip territory. The first one is Bad Blood, and I never liked this song, and I skipped it consistently since like the moment I heard it. And recently, I just decided, I was like, you know what? This is kind of a bop. It only took about 8 years. Out of the Woods, never liked this song, always skipped it. Now, it's like a sometimes skip. I don't always skip it. I do find it a little repetitive, but I don't hate it. So there is hope for I Know Places Yet. Just not yet. I feel like some of you are definitely ready to cancel me after this one. Okay, my skips on Fearless. I love Fearless so much. It's probably my second favorite album. And for such a big album, well, Taylor's version is a really big album, I feel like I don't really have that many skips. So on the original Fearless, I only ever had 2 like consistent resolute skips. Number 1 is 15. I always hated this one. I'm really sorry. And I love like the Fearless era singles. I love Love Story and You Belong With Me. I don't like 15. I also have always skipped Breathe because I just think it's boring. Like, it's not a bad song or anything, it's just boring. I also occasionally skip Change, but that's not like a firm skip. I don't dislike this song, but I don't really care about it either. And as far as the original Fearless, I would never have really dreamed of skipping any of the other ones, except The Best Day. But I do love that song. That's only like a sometimes skip because I fall into the category where that song can be like very depressing. But I do really love that song, so I don't include it as like a skip. I love the Fearless Vault tracks so much, and I don't hate any of them. And my unpopular opinion is that I like the Fearless Vault tracks way better overall than the Red Vault tracks, although I do love some of the red ones. I sometimes skip We Were Happy, but I don't dislike it. And I'll sometimes skip That's When, but I don't dislike this one either, and the other Vault tracks I really love. I'm a big fan of Fearless. I would tell you my skips on Reputation if I had any skips on Reputation. Reputation is simply a no skip album, and I'm not even just saying that. Like, there are albums I love that I still like have skips on, even though I can listen all the way through. Not a single skip on Rep. But importantly, in addition to it being no skip, not enough people talk about Reputation being a jelly album from start to finish. Like, every song works. You could listen to it literally in order and it still fits, like still with the books. It's actually kind of crazy. Like, obviously they will always own Delicate, but they own like every song on this track list. And when I was asked like what is this character's favorite Taylor Swift album, I always said Jeremiah's obviously Reputation because it's really fun and bumpin', but it's deceiving because it's not just that. It's actually arguably the most romantic album, and that's so him. And it's like loud and bold and partying, but it's really so romantic and about falling in love with a best friend in a really dark time and ocean blue eyes, like the golden motif too, because Jeremiah is golden. Like that's like such a Jeremiah motif in the books and in the show. And it's just like, I can't, like, dress is actually insane, the way that was actually written about them. Like just the whole concept of it being a dress, like who loves girls in dresses, who loves Belly in dresses, and a golden tattoo, and the way she said my name, I really can't. New Year's Day, like, that is that. Please don't ever become a stranger whose laugh I could recognize. That is them. I could write a dissertation like solely on dress. I could write one for like each song. Like, it's actually, why does nobody talk about the fact that this album was just like written about Jelly? I really want to like pull out the quotes and just like do this, because like you're kidding. And it's just because it's so like hot and fun, but it's also so sweet and romantic and genuine and deep. But like it's nobody sees it that way at first, and it's just like, ooh, it's so them. And I can't. And you know what I think is funny? The way that originally it was, oh well, Jeremiah and Belly just give like platonic besties vibes, and then now that you see that that's not true, it's just, oh well, it's only lust. Okay, which one is it? Why don't you just admit that they're best friends, they're emotionally connected, and they have great chemistry, and they're in love? That's what Friends to Lovers is. Just admit that it's good and go. Anyway, Reputation is a Jellyfish album, and I could talk about this forever. You get it. So part 1 of the Reputation is a Jelly album from start to finish analysis. We will focus on one of my very favorites, and perhaps one of the most obvious examples, Dress, with quotes. So obviously the song Dress is about falling in love with your best friend, right? But more than that, first of all, right off the bat, just the concept of this song being called Dress and it being about a dress. Who loves dresses? Who loves Belly in a dress? Girls in sundresses are who's kryptonite, and Book Jeremiah is always talking about dresses. He loves her prom dress. She looked so good in it. He loves her Sound of Music dress. In the piggyback ride scene where he carries her across campus because her feet hurt, he comments on the Sound of Music dress and how much he likes it. And that reminded me of a scene in season 1 where Belly is wearing this dress, and it reminded me of that scene because this is kind of similar to the way the Sound of Music dress is described, because it's a blue and white fluffy dress, and Jeremiah gets all flustered seeing her like this. Our secret moments in a crowded room, they got no idea about me and you. Do I even have to explain that one? Like, so many people have no idea about them. People, they don't have any idea about them. People don't get it. All of this silence and patience, pining and anticipation, pining and desperately waiting. And why are they doing that? Why are they holding back? My hands are shaking from holding back from you. They're holding back because it's delicate, but they want to. And don't think I forgot about Major Mark on Me, a golden tattoo, because that's one of the most important parts, because Jeremiah has such a golden motif throughout the books of being sunshine and the sun and golden hair. And this quote that will actually lower me into my grave in the last memory that Belly shares about him in the last book, where she says, in my memory, he would always be golden. And obviously, like, golden retriever, even in the show, he's golden. Inescapable, I'm not even gonna try. And if I get burned, at least we were electrified. Belly describes their relationship as inevitable, something that in some ways felt like a big surprise, but in other ways was always there. And how did I not see this? Inescapable. And that was clear from like the first chapter of the first book. And if you didn't pick up on that, again, that's not my problem. And if I get burned, at least we were electrified. This might hurt. He might get hurt. It's delicate. He can hold back his feelings. She can hold back. But at some point, it doesn't matter because it's worth it. If I get burned, at least we were electrified. It was worth it. You kiss my face and we're both drunk. Okay, so obviously that's just them, and there's like so many things, but it specifically reminds me of the scene in book 2 where they're drinking and playing Truth or Dare, and he's like, I dare you to kiss me, old school style, and she kisses him on the cheek. Obviously, I don't want you like a best friend, self-explanatory, but say my name and everything just stops. Who is canonically weak for Belly saying his name? He's mad at her. He wants to put those feelings aside, but being in the car next to her, smelling her, the way her nose wrinkled up as she thought, her nervous smile and chewed up fingernails, the way she said his name. Even in my worst times, you could see the best of me. Even in my worst lies, you saw the truth in me. both of them feeling like the other has this understanding of them that nobody else has, them being so emotionally connected and crying in each other's arms throughout the books and comforting each other so much and finding sensitivity and understanding in each other where they can't find it in their family members. That emotional vulnerability, Belly noticing it and taking Jeremiah's hand, him noticing when she's insecure about things and reassuring her, him feeling like he doesn't have to perform with her, he doesn't have to be a mirror ball, she gets him, her feeling comfortable with him, she can be herself, she doesn't have to walk on eggshells, she doesn't have to be polite or walk around things. And I woke up just in time, now I wake up by your side. Dreams aren't real. Wake up by your side is always going to be their line. Sleeping next to each other is always going to be their thing. They slept next to each other as kids. They sleep next to each other for comfort. Belly feels safe sleeping next to him. They're so snuggly and adorable. My one and only, my lifeline. I'm just going to leave this passage here once again. My one, past, present, and future, a golden tattoo. Anyway, this song was written about them. Happy Jelly Day to all who celebrate. I just have a little sentiment that I need to share with my jellyfish as we go into this. Enjoy this. Protect your joy and protect your peace. I think we're in for a good time. We're in for a fun time. I've been saying that since the beginning. And don't let anything steal your joy. Don't let anything steal your peace. You do not have to waste your emotions or your time feeling sorry for Conrad right now. You do not have to engage with whoever's saying right now. You don't have to do that. Not tonight. If something stupid happens, just ignore it. You don't have to accept it. Just move on. Take what you want to take and don't let them get to you. As somebody who's seasoned, they're gonna be scrambling, okay? Just don't. You don't have to bother. You don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to think about season 3 this. It won't be for a long time. You don't even have to acknowledge it. And honestly, I wouldn't tonight. You don't have to feel sorry for Conrad tonight. You don't even have to think about him if you don't want to, when everything is almost certainly gonna eventually get blown up for he gave me infinity and bad self-esteem. You don't have to think about it. Don't let anyone pressure you into jumping ship or not enjoying what you enjoy. You're not crazy and you're not wrong. We know, we have all the receipts. I have the dissertations. I have the reasons, and I'll continue to share them. But tonight, it's as simple as this. One sparks joy. This one sparks joy. This one does not spark joy, and it never will. And it can be as simple as that tonight. This one sparks joy. One of you sent me this, and oh my God, you would never know that their ship is endgame by the way they act so threatened. We're not like that. We have convictions. It's not like that for us. We know the truth. They can't see what we see. They're just helplessly gazing. I know everything there is to know about this series, and no matter how many times I go through it again, you could ask me, are you still Team Jeremiah? Do you still ship Jelly? And I'll look you right in the eyes and say, yes, I still. And that's it. And that's what I want to say to my beloved jellyfish, as somebody who's been here before. Enjoy it. Don't let anyone stop you from enjoying it. And do so with the knowledge and the confidence that you're not wrong and you're not crazy. Some people are just loud and bitter. Just know that and enjoy it. And I'll be here. You know I'll be here. XO. I interrupt regularly scheduled programming just to clear up 2 pieces of Team Conrad propaganda. Number 1, this post I see going around that says, in a recent interview, Taylor Swift reveals she's Team Conrad from The Summer I Turned Pretty. This was made up by a Bonrad stan account. There is no interview. There is no source for this. Find it for me. I'll wait. No offense to Bonrad stan accounts or this account, but they appear to have simply made this up. If you can find me a source for this, I'll gladly stand corrected, but there just isn't one as of now. But also, even if she did say that, I don't care. That would not sway my opinion at all, and I don't know why any of you think that it would. It shouldn't sway yours either. It would never sway mine. I have convictions. I have receipts. But also, I'm just not here for misinformation and irate Conrad stans using more nonsense with no source as defenses. This wouldn't be a defense, though. This wouldn't change my mind. But also, second piece of Team Conrad propaganda I want to shut down is the Susanna Susanna's wedding letters thing. So people love to claim that Susanna wrote like wedding letters for Belly and Conrad together because like she knew that they were going to get married. And first of all, if she had done that, that would have been very messed up, but that's not what happened. So spoilers for the worst and most atrocious book in the series, Will Always Have Summer. I have a lot to say about that book, by the way, but Belly and Jeremiah are getting married, and Susanna had written letters for all of them for their wedding days. And so Laurel gives Belly hers and she gives Jeremiah his, and in Jeremiah's envelope, it's Conrad's letter, which is just like very upsetting, but it wasn't because like she wrote some specific personalized letter to both of them. She had mixed up the envelopes, but she wrote letters for all of them, obviously. But she doesn't write in Belly or Conrad's letter that she assumes they're marrying each other, because that would be really gross if she had done that. If you wanted to derive something cute and Bonrad from those letters, you could be like, oh, but it was cute that Susanna wrote in Conrad's letter that she had only seen him in love once, and that was with Belly. But you always have to make it nonsensical because Conrad really doesn't have that many defenses. And as far as the whole the moms were team Bonrad thing, more so in the show, but that's not a good thing. And I have a lot to say about that and how very much that contributes to how overlooked Jeremiah's feelings and burdens are, and the way that he is held to a much higher standard because he just is kinder and acts better than Conrad, and therefore he isn't given the same allowances or even appreciation or understanding that Conrad is, and nobody even sees that. But anyway, that's also just another example of how Conrad being the one and the whole Bonrad relationship is just another example of tell don't show, and I hate it. Anyway, lies and propaganda. I am so tired of the Team Jeremiah didn't read the books comments, and on anything anybody ever says it's, but did you read the third book? Yes, I have. I just reread it actually, and I do not like that book, but the only defense is, well, Jeremiah cheated on Belly. Jeremiah literally did not cheat on Belly. So without further ado, let's get into the final book in the Summer I Turned Pretty series, Will Always Have Summer, Why I Don't Like It, and the Hypocrisy. I think the plot of this book is silly and contrived, and it exists to ruin Jelly and justify Bonrad getting together in the end, despite the fact that Conrad did nothing to earn it, and Jeremiah was objectively better than him the whole time and had a closer, more intimate and romantic relationship with Belly the whole time, but I don't even think it succeeded in doing that. Jeremiah definitely messed up in this book and didn't act perfectly, but he did not cheat on Belly, and he was still by far the most sympathetic character in this book. This book actually made Belly and Conrad look completely unbearable. The book opens when Belly and Jeremiah have been dating for 2 years, and according to Belly, he has been a wonderful, sweet, thoughtful, and loving boyfriend / best friend, and they're very happy. That's what we hear. He's a great boyfriend. Belly loves him so much. They haven't had intimate relations yet because Belly is waiting for the right time. Jeremiah has never looked at another girl the whole time they were together. She tells us this. Before Jeremiah goes on spring break, they get into this big, serious fight and explicitly break up. And I was almost 100% on Jeremiah's side for that fight. And another thing that feels really dirty about this book that a lot of you have pointed out and I agree with is that Jeremiah's narration is taken away in this book. The previous book included narration from Jeremiah. This book includes narration from Conrad instead of, not in addition to, so we do not get to hear Jeremiah's point of view. But as far as the fight, Jeremiah and his fraternity brothers get this last minute deal to go to Cabo on spring break, and Belly is annoyed about this. She claims she wanted him to see his dad over spring break and spend time with her and do things that they had maybe talked about doing, but she doesn't communicate this well or why she's really upset, and instead is passive aggressive and ultimately digs at his insecurities and destroys his self-esteem for no reason, which is unfortunately something she is shown to do throughout the book. I know they're really young and emotional, and I'm not expecting Belly to be perfect, but if anybody should have apologized first after that fight, it was Belly. So basically, long story short, what happens is Belly originally tries to put her feelings about this on, you should see your dad. And Jeremiah's like, is this really about my dad, or do you just not want me to go on spring break without you? You should come with me. It'll be fun. And Belly's like, no, it's not that, and I don't want to go and hang out with your stupid fraternity brothers and be the only girl there. And he's like, you wouldn't be the only girl there. And she's like, you didn't want me to come anyway, have fun with the Zetas. And he's upset by this, and he's like, if you don't trust me by now, I don't know what to tell you. I've never done anything to make you question me, and Belly, I really don't need you guilt tripping me about my dad. And then we end up here where she comes for his existence pretty unnecessarily, I would say, and she says, I can't believe how selfish you are. And he's like, I'm the selfish one now. And she's like, yes, you are definitely the selfish one in this relationship. It's always about you, your friends, your stupid fraternity. Have I told you I think your fraternity is stupid? Because I do. And he's like, what's so stupid about it? And she says, it's just a bunch of entitled rich guys spending their parents' money, cheating on tests with your test bank, going to class wasted. And he's hurt. And he's like, we're not all like that. And she's like, I didn't mean you. And he's like, yeah, you did. What? Just because I'm not pre-med, this makes me this lazy frat guy. And she says, don't put your inferiority complex on me. And she says it without thinking, and she's like, it's something I thought but never voiced. Conrad was the one who was pre-med. Conrad was the one at Stanford working a part-time job at a lab. Jeremiah was the one who told people he majored in beerology. And he's like, what the hell does that mean, inferiority complex? And she's like, forget it. And then Jeremiah says, if you think I'm so stupid and selfish and wasteful, why are you even with me? And she says, before I could answer, before I could say you're not stupid or selfish or wasteful, before I could end the fight, Jeremiah said, F it, I won't waste your time anymore. Let's end it now. And she doesn't stop him. She says fine. And then she leaves and she says, I cried the whole way home. I couldn't believe we had broken up. This is a proper breakup. They are broken up. Belly is acknowledging it as a breakup herself. She just as easily could have stopped Jeremiah or apologized and said, I don't think those things, but she didn't do that. And quite honestly, if anybody should have apologized first, it would have been her in this fight. So Jeremiah goes to Cabo, angry, hurt, and clearly feeling like absolute trash about himself, has a one-night stand with this random girl, Lacey Barone. Belly and Jeremiah apologize to each other and get back together shortly after, but he never tells Belly about Lacey. Was he right for that? No. Should he have told her? Yes. Was Belly justified in being very hurt by that? Yes. Did he cheat on her? No. Do I think that's anything compared to what Conrad had consistently done throughout 3 books? No. Do I understand how it happened, and do I think he's more redeemable and forgivable? Yes. So Belly finds out about Lacey Barone, like in a bathroom. Jeremiah doesn't tell her. Is that super hurtful? Yes, of course. Do I totally understand why she feels betrayed and so upset? Yes, absolutely. But I think it's summed up and demonstrated well with this. Jeremiah had never disappointed me before. For him to do it now made it that much harder because I hadn't seen it coming. It was hard to believe that just a few short hours ago, he'd carried me across campus on his back and I'd loved him more than ever. This is what I mean about Jeremiah being held to a much higher standard to Conrad by everyone in the story and everybody in the fandom. Conrad disappoints Belly and treats her like garbage over and over and over again and is forgiven, and he's just the one. Jeremiah does it once and it's a sinful criminal offense. He gets harsher punishment, he gets less allowances, he gets less understanding, and that's not to say this wasn't a big mistake, but the standard is not the same. And Belly, for her part, has every right to be upset and hurt about this, but she can't just decide that they weren't broken up when they were very explicitly broken up. Jeremiah certainly doesn't fight her on the semantics of it. He fully accepts responsibility and acknowledges, I hurt you, I betrayed you, I lied to you, I'm so ashamed of myself. He's deeply remorseful. I will also add that we find out later that this whole time Jeremiah knew about a night that Belly spent in Cousins with Conrad. It wasn't planned and they didn't like make out or anything, but Belly never told him about it. We know that he knew about it before that breakup, so obviously that was probably weighing on his mind too, and he never held her to that. And he doesn't try to make excuses for himself. He's deeply regretful. They cry, she slaps him, he takes it, which brings me to the dumb engagement plot, which I do think is stupid, but I don't think was manipulative. So when Belly is finally ready to talk to Jeremiah again and he apologizes again, he asks her to marry him, and I think that exists for drama and so that we can have a wedding plot and Clownrad can swoop in and be like, pick me, choose me, which is like literally what he does. But even so, first of all, you can't put this entirely on Jeremiah when Belly was 100% for it and even adamant about it. She could have said no. There were even times where Jeremiah was like, do you want to postpone the wedding? Do you not want to do this? And she was like, no, we have to do it. And I do think this whole plotline is stupid, but I think the reason Jeremiah did this is very clear. To prove his loyalty, yes, but so that he could prove that he could be what Belly wanted, somebody responsible and serious. And this was his like young, emotional, misguided way of doing it. And I've said so many times, in so many ways, Jeremiah is much more mature than Conrad. Jeremiah wasn't perfect, but he always did try to do what Belly wanted and to please her, and most of the time he did a pretty good job. But because she has this depressing, toxic idealization of Clownrad and he's just the one, we all know where this story ended up. And I'm sorry, even with all that, what did Clownrad do to prove himself in the 3rd book? Absolutely nothing. After treating her like trash, emotionally yo-yoing her, never even owning up to, admitting, or claiming his feelings for her when she's about to marry somebody else, he ropes her back in literally the night before and is like, pick me, choose me, be with me. Like, okay, that's the guy I'm supposed to root for, sure. and the garbage trash treatment for the first 2 books, and even the third one is supposed to be undone with his narration being like, well, really, like, I just did it because I like you. Like, I was a jerk because I like you, and I was just protecting you. Like, sorry, no, not good enough for me. And he has the audacity to say to Belly, I didn't think you were the kind of girl who would put up with that from a guy. Talking about Jeremiah, like, not knowing the context. Like, he has the audacity, and Belly rightfully says, I've put up with much worse from you, and he still wins in the end? Sorry, but no. And you know who my heart broke for in the end, at the end of that book? Like you said, Jer Bear, 100%. Even with all that, I was devastated for my man at the end, and I thought he deserved so much better. And that last memory that Belly shared about Jer ditching the boys to collect sand crabs with Belly, even though they told him that he wouldn't be allowed to play their video game if he did it, and he did it anyway. And she says, in my memory, he would always be golden. In conclusion, I never liked this book. I find it infuriating and heartbreaking, and in my heart, it never happened. Jelly deserved so much better, and in my heart, they got better. But even with this, even after reading this, I am still 100% Team Jer. Thank you. So enough with the you haven't read the books and Jeremiah cheated, like, no critical thought. Do I think Belly will end up with Jeremiah in the TV series because Jenny Han alluded to the show being open-ended and possibly changing the ending? If you mean, like, assuming there is a 3rd season, which I think there most likely will be at some point, will they change the 3rd book so that Belly ends up with Jeremiah at the very end of the series instead of with Conrad? As much as I would absolutely love that, as a hardcore Team Jelly myself, no, I don't think so. I'm seasoned enough in these things to know that we really don't get nice things like that. But listen, I do think there is a silver lining for us. Stay with me. Although the show is different, and I think it's likely that they might change the plot or details of the 3rd season, the show has been taking a very clear direction since season 1. Much like the books, the show is presenting this very clear tell don't show narrative about how Belly and Conrad are just meant to be despite how awful he is. But more than that, the show does a lot of favors for Conrad, making him a lot more likable and sympathetic, even applying a lot of Jeremiah's positive attributes from the books to Conrad in the show. Taylor Swift only plays with Conrad. Boo, throwing tomatoes. But there is already a little bit of a shift in that thus far in season 2. It's still present, like invisible string playing during Belly and Conrad's snowy beach scene. They've given Bonrad more of a relationship in their flashbacks than there ever was in the books. Like, they really don't have one. Like, when Conrad says to Belly, this house is just as much yours as it is ours, that's something Jeremiah says to her in the books. However, I have also been down this road enough times to say with a good amount of confidence that Jelly is going exactly the way we want it to this season. I do believe that Jelly is about to have its beautiful, shining, romantic, slow burn, angsty, but tender and sweet friends to lovers moment. We're already building up to it. It's great, and I think we will love it. I do believe that this season will be the best season no matter how many seasons follow it, and season 2 will end with Jer Bear and Belly together. That is book accurate. I think it's going to be very good, and I think we will love it. At the very least, I think this season will provide us Jelly stans with the highlight of the series in general, and something we can watch and truly love and enjoy and turn off when we so desire, the way I often turn off New Moon before the phone rings and Dustward crawls out of his dumpster, and then ignore whatever follows. And hey, I'm used to that. And remember, Jellyfish, they can tell us that Conrad is always going to be the one because he's the one Belly wants and he's just the one and they're meant to be, but it'll never be good because we weren't shown that. The guy who treats you like trash, emotionally yo-yos you, constantly disappoints you, and lies to you, who you keep running back to because you've idealized him since you were 10, and it's all supposed to be okay and justified because maybe he secretly liked you all along, is never going to be the star-crossed lovers moment that they think it is. Jeremiah and Belly had the genuine connection and the love and the childhood friends to lovers gold and the tenderness at the end of the day, and it was beautiful, and it will always be there. It will always be rare. You can see it. It's clear, and they can try to ruin it, but Bonrad will never be that guy because it's just meaningless and sad. And I'll leave you with this, and I want to come back to this because I have so much to say about the difference between the two relationships, but I think it's summed up well in 2 passages where Belly describes her relationship with Jeremiah, and then she talks about her relationship with Conrad in a very similar way, and it's just so abundantly clear how hollow Conrad's description is in comparison. About Jeremiah, Belly says, I watched him make his way through the crowd feeling proud I could call him mine. My boyfriend, my Jeremiah, the first boy I had ever fallen asleep next to. The first boy I ever told about the time I accidentally walked in on my parents doing it when I was 8. The first boy to go out and buy me Midol because my cramps were so bad. The first boy to paint my toenails, to hold my hair back when I threw up that time I got really drunk in front of all his friends. The first boy to write me a love note on the whiteboard hanging outside my dorm room. You are the milk to my shake, forever and ever, love, Jay. How corny and sweet. He was the first boy I ever kissed. He was my best friend. More and more I understood. This was the way it was supposed to be. He was the one, my one. And here we have the literal conclusion to the series on Conrad. This is our start. This is the moment it becomes real. We are married. We are infinite. Me and Conrad. The first boy I ever slow danced with, ever cried over, ever loved. I mean, it's all there. We can all see it. Stand firm, jellyfish. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and enjoy the ride. Enjoy season 2. I'm telling you, I really believe this love is ours, and I'll be right here with you, enjoying it and talking it all. So I get asked pretty often, who do I hate more, Clownward Cullen or Clownrad Fisher? And while they are both certainly fictional enemies of mine, there is a clear answer. And hear me out. Conrad literally is Edward, right? Conrad is cut directly from Dustward's glittering, crusty cloth, right? Because the summer I turned pretty literally is just copy-paste Twilight, and I talk about that all the time, and I'm not even saying that as a judgment, because at the end of the day, that's a huge part of why I love it so much. But at the end of the day, geriatric Joe Goldberg Cullen is always going to be so much worse, because this old man is truly a monster, a 100-year-old supernaturally alluring predator with supernatural powers of attraction, unlimited resources, and unlimited advantages, choosing to spend that unlimited time and advantage stalking and pursuing teenagers, terrorizing a community, violently misogynistic and racist, truly maniacal in sentiment and action, in addition to having the most unlikable, elitist, loathsome personality I could possibly think up in a man. He's gonna be worse. And whereas Floprad will always be a jerk and will always be a flop, a completely unredeemable and horrific love interest for Belly, he was a teenager for most of the story. And don't get me wrong, he's terrible. I think he is completely unredeemable and unjustifiable as Belly's love interest. But of course, I'm gonna sympathize more with like an actual young person. And of course, I have moments where I can sympathize with the flop, you know? He's much more sympathetic and likable in the show, but in the books, like, he's really terrible. But I have moments where I'm like, oh, the poor sap. Like, I'm gonna sympathize with somebody who loses their mother young. It really is the worst. He's terrible, though. He's not good. And while I will always hate them both, not only for who they are as people, but also for the fact that in both stories, the sweet, genuine, angsty, but tender friends to lovers relationship between sunny, smiley boy with a biblical J name and his best friend Bells, who he knows better than anybody, who can like read each other's minds, gets blown up in favor of them and their undemonstrated infinity and forever narrative that were not shown at all. And I will always and forever hate that in my heart. Scumward, this guy, like, he embodies so much evil in so many ways. And if you comb through all these books and all the text in the way that I have, like, he truly is just such an embodiment of evil in so many ways, and it's so horrifying. He is definitely worse. And whereas he gives more, right, and there's more reasons why you might like fall in love with Edward, he is so much scarier. Like, this guy like is truly maniacal and monstrous. Like, The Summer I Turned Pretty, like, if I view everything up until the last book, like, I do consider it to be very tragic and even concerning. Twilight is truly a tragedy and a horror. And while they are similar in big ways and small ways, and this is something I want to talk about separately, but the way they both abandon the love interest in the cruelest way possible, lie to them, destroy their self-esteem, and it's supposed to be romantic when they come back, and then they don't even stick to that conviction of like, oh, well, I was doing it for your own good and for your protection, when it really caused immense harm and they did not have to do it that way. And then they also prove that they really never had that intention. And it's just so oddly similar and so weird that it's gets romanticized. All that said, Glitter Bag is always going to be worse, objectively and in my book. But please do not mistake that for me saying that I in any way would ever, in any way, shape, or form, root for Conroach, because I will never do. So I'm going to bring it up again. To the powers that be, to whom it may concern, Jenny, whoever, what was this all about? Because I didn't forget. And don't get me wrong, like, I love it and I'm grateful. As my man once said, I'm grateful. But what was this about? Because this is too good for me to not know what it was about, and I never forgot. Like, are you kidding me? What was the reason? What was the reason? What is the story behind these photos? I know you're kidding me. Like, what? Like, I'm so glad. Like, I will forever treasure this. But, like, why? Why is the hair so beautiful? What was this from? Be serious right now. I can't believe they got married. And don't think I forgot about that little video where Jer Bear proposes to her on the beach. And then this. What is the story? Is this gonna turn into the Samurai Turn Pretty equivalent of the deleted footage of the Jacob and Bella future vision that I have to bring up every 5 to 7 business days? Because if 10 years from now I'm still begging for answers about this, I actually won't be surprised at all, because that's what I do. But like, you're kidding me! I can't believe they actually got married, Jer Bear and Jelly Belly forever. They actually did, so don't even start arguing with me. Anyway, one more look at this, because it's so cute. Daylight is and always will be a Jelly song. I have been saying this. You guys know that. Let me break it down for you. There is simply, endgame or no endgame, no way to spin Daylight as a Bonrad song. I once believed love would be burning red, but it's golden. Who's the red love? Who's the golden love? Jeremiah is littered with golden motifs and references. Let me show you. Conrad absolutely is the red love, the black and white love, the one that she's been sleeping in for so many years, and then she wakes up because dreams aren't real. But Jeremiah is golden. That's his whole thing. There's just no denying that. And don't get me started on that bizarre sun quote in the show, because I will get there. But here, very first descriptions. Conrad, dark, 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 completely unattainable, unavailable. Jeremiah, though, he was my friend. He was nice to me. He was the kind of boy who still hugged his mother, still wanted to hold her hand, even when he was technically too old for it. He wasn't embarrassed either. Jeremiah was too busy having fun to ever be embarrassed. Golden hair, golden curls, rosy cheeks, an angel. Sunshine and smiles. Jeremiah makes her feel comfortable. He makes everyone feel comfortable, particularly her. He made everything lighter, easier. Just seeing his face took away some of the strain of being there. Makes people feel comfortable, brightens everything, nice to everybody. He's golden. He's a golden retriever. Jeremiah is the golden one. That's just the facts, and this is really culminated and solidified in this last memory Belly shares of Jeremiah in the last book that lowers me into my grave. She talks about how when they were really young, she was looking for sand crabs with Jer, and Steven and Conrad were going to get a video game, and they told him, if you don't come with us, then you can't play the video game, and he stayed with her anyway. And this makes her feel really chosen and loved and special. And this is a theme throughout their relationship in the books. And she says, who would choose sandy old sand crabs over a new video game? And she realizes it wasn't about that. It was about being with her and choosing her. And she says that Jeremiah watched them play their new video game, and he didn't ask if he could play, even though she could see how much he wanted to. And she says, in my memory, he would always be golden. Jeremiah is golden. Dark, 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 stoic and detached, moody. You have to work for every smile. Actual things that Belly says. Conrad, who dictated the mood of the house, how everyone else felt, nothing would feel right again until things were right with Conrad, is not the golden sunlight one. He is a doom cloud. If anything, he could be the moon and the stars if you really want to stretch that. And that's why this quote from Laurel in season 1 was always one of the most nonsensical additions to the show for me that made no sense. It's right up there with that candy scene that they added in the finale that like makes no sense. Like, tell don't show about Conrad that just doesn't make sense. For Belly, Conrad is the sun, and when the sun comes out, the stars disappear. There's absolutely nothing to indicate that Conrad is the sun. Nothing that shows that Conrad is the sun. If anything, he could be the stars, because the thing that all the Bonrads always romanticize is this quote, so no, he didn't give me flowers or candy, he gave me the moon and the stars, infinity. And I have thoughts about that. I'm just gonna say that this is Belly romanticizing the fact that her situationship showed up empty-handed on Valentine's Day and took her to her front lawn and trying to make that romantic. This was pretty sad and pathetic in my opinion, just like all the other below bare minimum things that is romanticized about Conrad. But whatever, if you want to say that, okay, fine, he can be the moon and the stars. That like fits with his like motifs, even though I don't think they're good, but Conrad just simply is not the son. And then the other thing you're clinging to dear life for is this motel scene when this is literally artificial light shining on that roach over there. That's not daylight. That's not the sun. And then, yeah, Belly's shadow is on the Jeremiah sign. And then what did Beyonce say? What did Beyonce say when her song started playing like 5 minutes later, when they go out into the daylight in the morning and they kiss? Your love is bright as ever, even in the shadows. We don't need artificial light. He is the light. He is the daylight. But anyway, it's not just that. That's not the only reason Daylight is a Jelly song. It's more than that. First of all, Sneaking in Your Bed, that's Jelly. That is their thing. That has always been their thing. They slept next to each other as kids and they sleep next to each other for comfort. So in the first book, the night that Belly finds out about Susanna's cancer, because in the book, both boys know the whole time, another convenient change in the show, and Jeremiah simply doesn't act like that. And the fight that they get into is because Jeremiah witnesses a fight between Conrad and Belly where he grabs her, shakes her, and is being rude to her, and that's what causes them to fight. But that doesn't matter. Either way, she sleeps into Jeremiah's room and sleeps next to him because she says that the last time she fell asleep next to him like that was the last time she felt really, truly safe in the world. And they cry in each other's arms and sleep next to each other. And they're always sneaking in and out of each other's beds in their dorms, and it's really, really cute, and they're just cuddly and soft, and they sleep next to each other. That is not a thing that her and Conrad ever do. Sneaking in your bed is Jelly. And just the entire idea and concept of the song, this love, this golden love, is something that she has woken up to after being in a dark night, a red love, a burning red love, a black and white love. You can scream endgame till you're blue in the face. It doesn't matter. Jeremiah is the second love that she woke up to when she says, had it always been there. You've been hiding in plain sight. In some ways, it felt like a big surprise, and in other ways, it felt inevitable. I don't want to look at anything else now that I saw you. She's seen him this way, and now she can never look away. I don't want to think of anything else now that I thought of you. She thought of him. She woke up because dreams aren't real. You can cling to endgame. We don't care about that. Endgame is not synonymous with good, but that's fine. But they're not daylight. The that's the way I loved you love is not the daylight love. Jelly is daylight, thank you. One thing that really gets me is that Bonrads always haunt Jelly posts and stuff with like, well, Bonrad is endgame, Belly and Conrad are endgame, they're infinite, they're endgame, and like that's the argument. And the first thing I want to say is that being endgame is not synonymous with being good. It's literally a love triangle and people are going to pick sides. I've never understood this. This is like the Team Jacob doesn't exist argument when like that is insane. This is also insane. We don't care that it's endgame. That endgame is embarrassing. You know who else was endgame? Geriatric Joe Goldberg, Edward Cullen, Ezra Fitz. Like, these guys were endgame too. That didn't make it a good ship. And I think the whole like they're endgame, they're infinite, they're meant to be really just like mirrors how tell don't show their relationship is. And that's why I will never root for them. I don't care if they ended up together on that pathetic one-page endgame at the very end, the last page of the last book, when she didn't even choose Conrad. There was nothing in those first 2 books, or even the third one, that made me want Conrad to have a redemption or be with Belly. He was awful. They made him so much more sympathetic in the show, and I still don't think he's good. Like, this is the stuff that you're hinging Infinity on. Infinity is about a necklace that he didn't even give her, ruined her 16th birthday for, and didn't give her in the books until literally the morning of her wedding to his brother. And in the show, she had to find it in a dirty contraceptive filled top drawer. A polar bear he got when he was 14 to make up for the fact that he took her there to flirt with a girl at the boardwalk. Yeah, it's nice that he noticed that she would want the polar bear and that he spent money getting it. It was still a consolation prize. It's not really a reason that you're soulmates, even if he didn't. It's not what? And a unicorn that he got for her birthday because he felt bad about yelling at her. Like, this isn't soulmate stuff. I'm sorry. And then my favorite is every everyone's favorite quote, "So no, he didn't give me flowers or candy. He gave me the moon and the stars." Infinity. That is Belly romanticizing her situationship, because in the book, they don't even have a relationship. She's romanticizing her rich situationship, showing up empty-handed without notice on Valentine's Day and taking her to her front lawn. Like, you absolutely have to be kidding me. Like, that's your endgame? Okay, great. That's not synonymous with being soulmates or being a good ship. Why you want the girl whose like central characterization is like being insecure and having bad self-esteem to be with the guy who like constantly puts her down, makes her feel insecure and bad about herself, and digs into her insecurities and never compliments or uplifts her? I looked in the books, he literally never compliments her. It is always backhanded if he says something, and the only compliment in the show is you have that pretty smile. That doesn't even happen in the book. I'm not rooting for her with that guy. Like, he didn't do anything to deserve being the one and endgame. It's embarrassing. This is your endgame. One page, the last page of the book, and this is her trying to scrounge up like 3 sentences to say about him, and I'm once again going to show her talking about Jeremiah in the same way. And you can keep saying endgame, okay? This is your man who couldn't even admit that he had feelings or loved this girl until the night before she was about to marry his brother. And this is your like magic redemption for that trash bag. Like, it just is not giving. And this, again, is her talking about Jeremiah in the same way. And you're still rooting for I slow danced and cried, and that's okay. But when we like talk about why we love Jeremiah, why we love Jelly, it's really not meaningful or helpful for you to say endgame, because we obviously don't care about that. And it's just so odd to me, like in a love triangle, when the side that wins like the endgame like jumps through hoops and does mental gymnastics and like does anything to deny the factual information and element of the story that the main character was in love with the person who didn't win in the love triangle. That was a significant part of the story. They were in love. She did love Jeremiah. She did choose him. And the fact that she ended up with Floprad in the end doesn't change or erase that. We care about what we're reading, what we're feeling. You can keep that 1-page endgame. It's embarrassing. You can keep those letters. And they weren't even like originally part of the story, so just like the fact that like that has to be this guy's redemption. Like, he was so bad throughout the books that you needed those to redeem him, and they weren't even good. Like, no, Ellie and Conroach were never even friends. We don't care about Endgame. Okay, don't jump down my throat, but I'm gonna say something that I really think needs to be said. You guys let Conrad get away with way too much. And I'm disappointed, but not surprised at you all acting like he's the perfect guy, because Conrad is such a dill wagon, and especially their early relationship is so rancid. Now, hear me out. My hot take is I just simply do not like Conrad. I never liked him. Yes, I have read the books. I haven't read them in a while. I have to reread them. I did read a little bit recently to like refamiliarize myself, and I simply don't like him. I can sympathize with him, whatever, but I don't like him as a love interest. And I get it, okay? I'm not saying it doesn't make sense to ship him and Belly, and I don't understand like why people would, because that is kind of the point. However, you can't act like he's not rancid. Like, the beginning of their relationship is so And again, jump down my throat if you will. Before the 3rd book, I for sure preferred Jeremiah. And in the show thus far, I definitely prefer Jeremiah. And even after that, I wouldn't say that I prefer Conrad. Like, I still really don't like him. And all the Jenny Han boys are kind of like that. And by the way, I absolutely love Jenny Han's books. Like, they're just really fun and nostalgic for me. And this one has always been more about vibes for me because I love summer and it's just so like cute. But the way you guys fight for your lives defending him is kind of funny, but it's also kind of concerning. Like, Conrad, really? And believe me, I'm not trying to take this away from you, because I begrudgingly have a long-standing, very complicated relationship with Peter Kavinsky. Like, so punchable. I can't stand him, but the truth is I can, and I begrudgingly like him and I can't help it. It just happened a long time ago, but like, I would never like defend him. I mean, okay, like maybe like 25% of the time I would defend him, like if he really deserved it, but not the way you guys defend Conrad. I enjoy roasting him because he deserves to be roasted, and I just think we could benefit from admitting that Conrad really isn't the moment like most of the time, but you like the drama and you like him anyway, and that's okay. Because you guys go like ridiculously hard and I'm like scratching my head. But in conclusion, I am also very excited for season 2. too. It's just such a fun show. I love Summer. He's not a king though. Conrad is not a king. Come on. I see this all the time too, and just like I'm hard pressed to figure out what Conrad's appeal was supposed to be, I have no idea where people get this. What is there in either the show or the books to indicate that Conrad always liked Belly and Jeremiah only liked her when she was pretty? First of all, it's funny that I see this sentiment from both the read the books crowd and the we're talking about the show crowd. It's giving Edward stans telling me to read Midnight Sun as if that like in some way defends him and doesn't make him look exponentially worse. Let's be clear. They did make Conrad more likable in the show. He's still not good, but he literally says in the show she was always some little kid, but now she's not. Like, not to her, of course, but like that's literally what he says. So like, where are you getting that? The only thing I can think is that in the show so far, like in season 1, they're only showing like Conrad's moments with Belly when they're kids, but let's be clear, he doesn't have many. But according to the book canon, Belly and Jeremiah have the closer relationship their whole lives. She tells us that Jeremiah was always my friend. They were best friends and they have a much closer relationship. He's much more caring towards her and they spend more time together. Need I remind you again that like the first memory we hear about with Conrad is when he takes Belly to the boardwalk so he can see and flirt with some girl that works there. And she describes that as the first time she had her heart broken. Like, what are you talking about? Conrad was always the boy that she idolized and she like had such a crush on him, so like every little thing that he did was like so special and significant to her, like even if it was him being a d-bag, which like 90% of the time it was. But you could probably infer from their memories and their anecdotes that Jeremiah liked her early on and like had a crush on her. You could probably infer the same thing about Conrad, right? Not that like he would ever admit it or like treated her well because of it. But I really don't even understand what the basis of this argument is, because like there's no indication that like Conrad liked her before. And need I remind you, the series is called The Summer I Turned Pretty. The whole point is that she grows up and everybody starts to see her in a more mature light and the boys start to see her in a more romantic light. And that's like pretty normal to like go from being kids to teenagers and be like, oh, like maybe I have a crush on this person. Like even like if you kind of knew it before, like Belly kind of has that experience herself with Jeremiah. So there really isn't anything to indicate that Conrad liked her first. Not that I think that's like super relevant, but what is clear, however you want to interpret this, is that Jeremiah just treated her better and was more caring and they had a closer relationship. And there was definitely more love and togetherness between them like the whole time, like all those years leading up. Like just objectively, they had the closer relationship. And also that first summer, Jeremiah did tell her that he had feelings for her. Like he was forthright and direct and not ashamed and said, you're my best friend, but I feel more for you and I can't hide it, which is interestingly something Dillwagon was never able to do. Instead, he emotionally yo-yoed her for 3 books until the late stage we know what had to happen so that he looks like the hero, which he like still didn't, honestly. So my thoughts are this is just another example of Clown Rat apologists pulling things out of thin air because he doesn't have any defenses in the actual canon, which you don't have to do. Like you don't actually have to be the Edward girlies for this one, but you insist on it. Just admit that you're a Conrad apologist for whatever reason and go. I'll respect it. I promise you I will. I don't care if you like him. Just say, that's my man, that's my garbage rat, and go. That's literally fine. But this is just nonsense. Like, this is why I can't take you seriously. Okay, let's talk about Junior Mint in the books, because I truly don't care if people want to romanticize this bear on their own time, but I need everyone to stop coming to me and trying to present this as something that writes away Conrad's actions or proves that he was always amazing to her or liked her more than Jeremiah, because it factually isn't, and this is factually not what happened. Those letters that weren't even included in the original releases of the books don't prove anything or state this. Now, to be clear, I'm not condemning Conrad for something that happened when he was 14 and Belly was 12. I certainly don't think it was sinister, but it's not the gotcha moment that you all seem to think it is. This is factually what happened. So we all know the story. This is the first memory Belly shares of Conrad, that he asked her to go to the boardwalk, and this is like the only time that they spend time alone together, and he takes her there and she's really excited, but she learns that he went there to talk to the girl who works at the ring toss. And so Belly realizes this and is very upset and doesn't let them see and is like, okay, I'm gonna go ride the Ferris wheel, win me a prize, okay? And he does. And is it nice that he noticed that that was the prize that she would want? Yes. But did he still just do it because he felt bad? Yes. And then here in book 2, Conrad, Belly, and Jeremiah are drinking and playing Truth or Dare, and Conrad admits to trying to hook up with that girl, but she socked him in the head and said she wasn't that kind of girl. And to be clear, I don't think that was sinister. He was 14 years old. It's not that big of a deal, but it is not a gotcha moment. And what's supposed to be his redemption and this infallible proof are these letters that were not even included in the original releases of the books. Like, my original copies don't even have these letters in it. So if it hinges on this, that's not very good. But he doesn't even say he didn't go there for the girl. And in one of these after the fact letters, like talk about an afterthought, he says that he probably spent 30 or 40 bucks trying to win her the bear. Sure, that's sweet, but again, it was just because he felt bad. Like, this just isn't the infallible proof that Conrad treated Belly well all along when he factually didn't. Like, her being an unreliable narrator because she didn't know his intentions when he did nothing to show his intentions doesn't mean that he didn't do what he did. Like, the unreliable narrator term is thrown around when you guys just don't like what happens. And again, that kind of just is the pattern with these like flashbacks with him. I never considered their childhood relationship to be anything special. The only other like cute one that only exists in the 3rd book is supposed to be like that one where he buys her the glass unicorn, but again, that was just because he felt bad. And yes, it's sweet that he noticed that she liked the unicorns, but I never considered this to be anything special because Belly literally tells us Conrad noticed everything. Conrad would notice if the neighbor's dog had more crust in its right eye than its left, or if the pizza delivery guy was driving a different car. It wasn't really a compliment to be noticed by Conrad, it was matter of fact. And this is kind of just the theme of their childhood relationship and all these moments that she idealizes. He's not particularly close with her. He's not friends with her. He doesn't spend time alone with her. He looks out for her in the way that he looks out for all the kids, and then feels bad when he does something mean sometimes, which is pretty standard for somebody his age, but it's not anything special. And again, that unicorn is only in the last book. This like, I spent the money on Junior Mint is only in letters that weren't even included in the original releases of the book. And it's just like, if the whole thing is like he was mean to you and treated you like trash for the first 2 books, and then as an afterthought I'm trying to explain why he actually wasn't, and this is it, it's just not very good. The one who was close with Belly as children was Jeremiah. He was the one who spent time alone with her and ditched the boys for her and had ESP and no secrets, and they had inside jokes. Like, that is just factually what happened in the book. The premise is literally that they both start to have more mature feelings for her that summer because she grows up, and it's very normal to go from being kids to being teenagers and realize you have romantic feelings. That's normal. But there's like no proof that Conrad was like better to her or like loved her more. That's just silly. And I don't care if you want to romanticize this polar bear, but I'm tired of people using it as this like token of Conrad's sainthood, because it just factually was not. Okay, is the Sour Patch Swedish Fish thing with Conrad and Jeremiah in the books? No, it literally is not. This was another force change, tell don't show Bonrad moment added in the show, which is like whatever. But I'm really tired of them saying like, oh my gosh, it's from the books. Like, book girlies know the Sour Patch Kids. No, it literally isn't. No, it literally isn't. This is what happens in the book. First of all, that scene literally doesn't happen in the book. The gas station before the motel scene is literally just Belly's stomach rumbles and Jeremiah goes into the gas station and gets her crackers. Very simple, sweet, whatever. Much like he is shown to in the show, Book Jeremiah knows Belly very well, can read her mind, does notice things about her, and is thoughtful, ESP. They share lots of candy and sweets together. The Twizzler straws are even cuter in the books. But as far as the Swedish Fish, Belly does like Swedish Fish in the books. We see it right here. She just likes candy. And yes, she likes Swedish Fish. She also likes Sour Patch Kids, but this isn't some magic thing that Conrad knew about. In these lovely after-the-fact letters that were not even in the original releases of the book, Conrad finds out from Laurel that Belly got lost in Spain looking for Sour Patch Kids and sends them to her, which is nice. I guess. Please don't get me started on these letters, because if I speak, so no, it is not from the books. I did think the scene in the show was really stupid and corny. Honestly, it was just another like forced like Bonrad tell don't show moment, and I don't think it was that significant. Like, yes, of course, I think that Jeremiah obviously would have known her favorite candy, but I really do not think it's significant in that way, because Conrad was just being a jerk in that scene. And you all know very well that if Jeremiah had acted like that and had done what Conrad had done in that car, you would be calling him a manipulative, abusive narcissist, and please don't try to deny it to my face, because I know it's the truth. I think it's clear why that scene was added, but I don't think it's this significant gotcha moment that you all seem to think it is. It doesn't make Conrad a good love interest. It doesn't make Jeremiah a bad one. We can see very clearly that Jeremiah knows Belly very well and pays very close attention to her and is very thoughtful. That candy thing is just kind of dumb. But if that's all you Bonrads have to latch onto, along with that crumpled up sweater that he produced only after Jeremiah noticed that she was cold and turned down the AC, fine by me, but stop saying it's from the books, because it's literally not. I have always said, and I maintain, like, even just from the books and in the show, Jer Bear knows Jelly Belly in a way that Conrad really can't and never could relate to or understand her. They have always had that special emotional connection, and that's just it. And like, yes, he does know little things about her. It's just the facts. Like, this is stupid. So I've gotten quite a few comments like, why are you talking about the books? Why are you talking about the differences between the book and the show when Jenny Han wrote both of them? And it always baffles me, because yes, I know that. And let me explain specifically why. Number one, because people talk about books on here. Like, that's kind of a lot of what I do. That's a lot of what a lot of people do. Second of all, because I was asked to. Like, most of my content, whatever I'm talking about, it's usually things that people are asking me to discuss. And why do we want to discuss these things? Just because we want to and feel like it? That would be a good enough answer. But specifically in reference to The Summer I Turned Pretty, it's because you all always preach read the books to us on every Jeremiah or Team Jelly post or positive thing about them ever. And by you all, I mean the militant, obnoxious Bon Roaches. And if that's not you, then this isn't about you. But we have read the books. I have read the books. That is why I always was, always will be Team Jer Bear and Team Jelly. And respectfully, if people are going to cry, read the books, if the books girlies know, I'm going to point out how you're all always wrong about the books and how Conrad is exponentially worse in the books. And all these defenses and excuses you have for him and all these things that you love about Conrad don't exist in the books. And I'm also going to point out how all your criticisms of Jeremiah that you use to paint him as a manipulative, villainous narcissist also don't exist in these books you're always telling us to read. We have read them. Not that I think Jeremiah is that in the show at all. And listen, I am a fan of Jenny Han's work. Truly. I love all of her books. Except We'll Always Have Summer. That book can choke, respectfully, except for like a handful of pages that I like. But I'm a fan of the books. I'm a fan of the show. That's why I talk about it. I would not spend this much time talking about something I didn't like. It's like the Twilight thing. Yes, I prefer the books. I greatly enjoy the movies and the film adaptations and the television adaptations as well. And you can hear me talk about things that I like. I love Show Jelly and I love Show Jer. That's Pookie. Like, do not start with me about him. I love him. He is a peach. That's Babe. I love him. I just think it's interesting that Conrad Stans and Bon Roaches scream read the books when factually this character had to be reinvented to be palatable for television. And I still don't think he's a good love interest. And if you're going to make those claims that, like, if you read the books, you would be Team Conrad and Jeremiah is a manipulative, narcissistic, whatever, then I'm going to talk about the way that Conrad had to be reinvented to be okay for the show. I'm going to talk about the differences and all the changes that were made to make Conrad more sympathetic, like the fact that both boys knew about Susanna's cancer the whole summer and Jeremiah simply didn't act like that. Like the fact that the fight started because Conrad was demeaning Belly and grabbed her and shook her. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the way that all the things you use against Jeremiah don't exist in the books. I'm going to correct that cheating narrative that you all run with. I'm going to do it if you haunt my comments like that. I'm going to talk about the way that a lot of Jeremiah and Jelly things were removed in the show and given to Conrad. I'm going to talk about how literally some of Jeremiah's words were put in Conrad's mouth, his actions. I'm going to talk about the way that Conrad was not the one to include Belly when they were kids, how they were never friends, how they never had a relationship in the books. And I'm going to talk about the Jelly and Jeremiah Jeremiah stuff that I like. Obviously, I'm going to talk about it. I'm a fan, and if you're going to scream, read the books, we're going to talk about the books. And if I get asked to talk about the books, I'm going to talk about it. Hope that helped. So Belly and Conrad's relationship, and Conrad as a love interest in general, skates by on this idea of infinity and, of course, this necklace. And I have never found this to be romantic in the slightest, particularly because of the way that this necklace is used. Very indicative of this tell, don't show narrative with Bonrad, where we're told that they're meant to be an infinite, but given no real reasons to show us why Conrad is a good love interest for Belly. And when I tell you this whole infinity theme makes even less sense in the books, and I'll explain why, I do think it's kind of equally trash in the show. So the first time we're introduced to this infinity concept is when Conrad draws the infinity symbol on her pancakes when they're kids and explains to her what it means. Now, this is something that is exclusively in the show. That doesn't even happen in the books. At least here you can kind of infer that there's some reason why infinity would mean something to Belly, right? And he gets her this necklace for her birthday, but doesn't give it to her, and she has to find it in a dirty contraceptive-filled top drawer after he made her cry on her birthday and ruined her Sweet 16. Like, I don't find that romantic, but okay. Then she drunkenly confronts him about it, and he still doesn't admit to it and doesn't give her the necklace. And then this necklace steps into its true form and purpose as a piece of back and forth leverage that he passes back to her every time she's moving on from him. Conrad only presents Belly with this necklace for the first time following something that you all like to conveniently ignore and accompanied by a literal "you up" text. Conrad finds out at the party in season 1 that Jeremiah might be hooking up with Belly, and then and only then does he send her a text saying that he wanted to take her to the Deb ball, and it wasn't really just because his mom asked him, even though his mom did ask him, and that's why he asked her. He also makes no effort to end things with Nicole, the other girl that he's stringing along, and things only end between them because Nicole sees that text that he sent to Belly and ends things with him. Then Conrad watches Belly get into the car with Jeremiah, and later that night he sends her a literal "you up" text. She agrees to talk to him and makes it very clear to him on this doc that she's done with him and does not want him to text her anymore. And then and only then does he present her with this necklace. She doesn't take it though. But I guess you all were too busy talking about how Jeremiah is a manipulative narcissist to acknowledge this sequence of events. Either way, the next time we see the necklace is at the start of season 2 when Belly makes it clear to him that she cannot proceed in a relationship with him, this time because she doesn't want to hurt Jeremiah and doesn't want to get in between them right now. Conrad, by the way, does not care about Jeremiah's feelings in this situation. I'm tired of everybody saying that he did. He didn't care. It was only because Belly said, no, I can't do this. He wanted to, and I don't buy the narrative about how he didn't know because, like I said, he found out from Steven that Belly might be hooking up with Jeremiah and only then made the decision to text her. So anyway, so she keeps the necklace, gives it back to him at prom, and then the next time we see it is in his dorm room in season 2. We do not see this necklace again. He makes no effort to give it back to her until the end of season 2 when she once again has made it clear that she is moving on, and he once again forces this necklace on her and she doesn't want to take it, and he's like, no, take it. Okay, so that's the show. Every time it's literally just when she's making it clear that she cannot proceed with him or she's moving on in some way. Now, this makes even less sense in the book, but is just as bad and worse in other ways because we don't even hear about this infinity concept until the second book when she finds it in his dorm room and then she just assumes that it is for her. And she says, it was infinity. I knew it was for me. And she puts it on because that's normal because she just knows that it's for her. But we're never told why she knows that it's for her until like 200 pages later when it comes up again and it's still not demonstrated or shown to us why infinity is like a thing. And again, when Cornroach catches Belly and Jeremiah smoochy and gets all hurt about it. But again, remember in the books, Belly and Conrad do not have a relationship. And he's like, so you like Jeremiah now? If you like Jeremiah, why are you wearing my necklace? And she's like, I found it when we were packing up your dorm room. It doesn't mean anything. And he's like, you know what it means, but we don't know what it means. And she's like, I don't. And then she says, but of course I did. I remembered when he'd explained the concept of infinity to me. But we never saw him do this. We still, at this point, have not seen him do this, and we never see him do it. And then he's like, give it back. It's not yours. I never gave it to you, and takes the necklace back. And then he says, go to Jeremiah. He's the one who wants you. I don't. I never did. Again, really softened him in the show, bailed him out 1,000,000 times. Again, Belly and Conrad have not had a relationship at this point. He has never claimed her as his girlfriend or admitted he had feelings for her. And then when this prince finally presents her with this necklace, it's literally the morning of her wedding to his brother. And then finally he's like, do you remember Infinity? You have to take it. I just can't keep it anymore. Like, you're kidding me. And then the one other time Infinity is mentioned is the one that really sends me with this quote that everybody likes to romanticize. So no, he didn't give me flowers or candy. He gave me the moon and the stars. Infinity. And this is like so embarrassing because this is Belly romanticizing her rich situationship, showing up empty-handed on Valentine's Day and taking her to her front lawn. Like, you absolutely have to be kidding me. This is Infinity? And he didn't give her the necklace here. And we're supposed to assume that he had it because it was supposed to be for her birthday present. He waited until the morning of her wedding to his brother. And we never even saw why Infinity matters to them. And again, not to yuck somebody's yum, but this concept of Infinity, this theme that their relationship is supposed to float by on, is very indicative of Bonrad as a whole. This tell, don't show narrative about how they're meant to be and forever and they're infinite with nothing to actually show us why. Yes, you're all absolutely correct. Infinity isn't real. It's just a concept. And the way it's used throughout the show and the books, this isn't romantic at all. He doesn't even give it to her. It's used as leverage in both cases. It's breadcrumbing and manipulative, honestly. And just a little side note, just between you and me, it's so corny. You kind of had to be there, but in like 2009, 2010, when these books were coming out, Infinity was so oversaturated that like you couldn't swing a bat without hitting an infinity necklace or an infinity symbol, and it was just like so overplayed and corny, and I've always felt that way. I do not think it's particularly romantic. I think it's very basic and cringe. But even if you don't feel that way, this concept and the necklace, it's not used in any kind of romantic way throughout the series. Like, this just isn't romantic. This is embarrassing. Like, okay, I got it. He gave you infinity and bad self-esteem. The really sick thing about the Jelly Stands and the Team Jeremiah girlies is that they'll watch this scene from before the Deb Ball outside the house where Belly is upset and Jeremiah notices and reassures her. And Belly's like, you'll do what? And he's like, I'll be like, yo, that's not cool at all. I'll grab your hand and we'll dance away from everybody. And then he twirls her as he does, and Belly looks all giggly and smiley and happy. And they'll turn the scene off before Steven shows up and ruins it. And then they'll watch it like 100 times and claim that it is better than any Bonrad scene ever and has more intimacy and joy and love than any Bonrad scene. And they'll like be so serious about that. And then they'll like bring up the books and talk about how like cute and sweet Jelly was in the books. And then they'll like literally like make dissertations and like get screenshots and stuff talking about it and how like this scene was like a very good representation of them, because it was just like so sweet and healing and like playful. And they'll be like so serious about it. It's me. I'm Jelly Stands. I'm Jeremiah Girlies.
I'm getting married next year and I feel like fairly confident I'm probably not going to change my last name. I don't feel super radical about it. Like, I don't think we should judge women who make the decision to take their husband's last name. I think you probably feel a sense of loss either way you choose as a woman. But I read this tweet, and the reactions that men are having to this tweet are radicalizing me. A message to pregnant women: please give your baby your surname. You carried a baby for 9 months, gave birth, and will be responsible for that child for the rest of your life. When you're registering the baby, ask yourself, why is the father's surname more important than yours? Fair question. I've never really interrogated, like, why is it that we always take our husband's names? Why do the kids always get the husband's name? I just assumed, the patriarchy, duh. But this tweet, the point is to make the father feel responsible for the child. Oh my God, that is totally it. And look at the responses. They're all reinforcing that exact concept. Sure, but then please raise the kid alone. If you want a broken society, you're on the right track. Like, if the kid is biologically mine but does not have my last name, why would I be expected to parent it? Men have no role and therefore no right to recognition in bringing up children. As if your child doesn't have your same last name, you have no role as a parent because your only role is to be recognized as a father, not actually to be a father? This guy says a child has the right to know its father, and using the mother's surname is just erasing that. The mother's surname is erased and children know their mothers. Your child will know you because you'll be there parenting him. Why is the baby's maternal grandfather's surname more important than the baby's father's? They literally don't think we exist. Like, they do not think we are our own people. Our last names are our last names. It's not just my dad's last name. Anyway, I just had to share that with someone. I think I am radical on this now. No one says to men, your last name is not really your last name because it just came from your dad. But people will look at a man and a woman, brother and sister, same last name, and say to the woman, that's not really your last name. It's just your dad's last name. The man will never be subjected to that. He gets an identity, the woman does not. If you think women do not have last names because they come from the paternal line, you're saying women are just transferable property for men to exchange throughout their lives and stake their claim on. When women are born, we get our last names the exact same way that men do. We are birthed, someone writes it on a piece of paper, and now it's ours. It does not matter how many men before me gave me this last name. Now it's mine. You gave it to me, and I can stake my claim on it exactly how any man can stake their claim on their own last name.
Did you ever notice how Conrad defenders and the anti-Jeremiahs, like, well, you wouldn't be Team Jeremiah if you read the books, never bring up book 1 and 2? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because he's a trash bag and all the defenses and favors for him that you have don't exist in the books and he's awful, and all these little things that you like to use to show that Jeremiah is a manipulative villain, not that it works, but they don't exist in the books either, and that Conrad's redemption for being a walking trash pile throughout the first 80% of the story only exists in the 3rd book, and he's still not good in that book, like at all. And then the other thing that supposedly redeems him is these letters, which were not good, and they didn't even exist in the original releases of the books. Did you ever think that's why? Word to the wise, don't say read the books to me, because we'll bring out the books. Why don't we talk about your man? In conclusion, Jellyfish, don't pay any mind to these people. They're big mad about Delicate at the end of the day. Handsome, you're a mansion with a view. They're also just mad that Conrad got told about himself and that not a single lie was told. Again, word to the wise, telling people to grow up, treating them like children, dismissing their input constantly, treating people poorly, and acting like you are the mature, infallible authority, even if you have the best of intentions, when you are simultaneously failing to communicate, acting like a child, hurting people in the process, doesn't make you an angel, the mature, better brother who deserved none of that and doesn't deserve to be called out. And that's going to result in people snapping at you eventually. And if you have endless empathy and sympathy for that person because of grief, maybe have some for the person who has the same mother as him. Also, Reputation is a jelly album from start to finish. Don't let these people talk. See, the thing about Steven is that I don't like him, and I've mentioned quite a few times I didn't like Steven in the books, and I really don't like him in the show either. But first, before we get into that, we just gotta get something out of the way. Quick, somebody provide me with an example. Tell me how Conrad challenged Belly in a positive way, or helped her to grow positively, or anything to that effect, because last I heard she was doing very poorly in school when they were together, crying, had bad self-esteem, and was begging him for the bare minimum in communication. Oh, there was that whole thing where he like encouraged her about volleyball, something she's passionate about. Oh wait, no, that was Jeremiah. Anyway, so to be clear, Steven in the books is just really not nearly as relevant or developed as a character. He's kind of not really important in the books, but I still didn't like him. He's not even there for like a good part of the summer in the first book. He's not relevant in the second book. We don't really hear much about his college carryings on. He's like very much in the background, irrelevant, but I never liked him just because I didn't like his attitude. I didn't like how he made a lot of nasty and body shamey comments about Belly. He just like was a jerk, and I get that the books as a whole are dated. I love them very much, but there's lots of dated stuff in there. But Steven was always just kind of a jerk. I didn't like the way he talked. I just didn't like him. I didn't know. Now, Steven and Taylor in the books, not a thing like that, not a couple. Taylor does have a crush on Steven. Belly doesn't know about, and she does catch them hooking up, and Belly's upset about it. And then she tells her that Steven was just using her and he doesn't really like her. Never really hear about it again, not a thing. And I will say that Tay-Tay is much more developed and even better in the show. I love Tay-Tay in the show. That being said, I never hated Taylor in the books. She really was kind of a regular teenage girl / preteen girl in the books. Not much different than Belly, like different but not worse. I think that Conrad stands specifically like love to villainize Taylor, and she certainly wasn't perfect, but she really wasn't this like villain that they make her out to be. And I was never really into Staylor for like a couple reasons. I do think that they have like some cute scenes, and I get why people would ship them, but it's just not a trope that I like this girl who's like idolized this older boy who's just so unattainable and like didn't care and then treated her poorly, and then he like finally comes around, but he's still kind of a jerk and like belittles her opinions. And I get like some bickering, but it's just really, it's not my vibe. I'm not here for this like first unattainable love, even though he treats you badly. Tay-Tay deserves so much better than Steven, and that's my opinion. I did not like his carryings on with Shayla, but then also to like call Taylor and like hooking up with her like the stupidest thing he ever did, and like I don't like the way he talks to her. Bottom line, it's just not for me. No. Now this and everything about this, absolutely crazy. Steven in the books does worship Conrad like everybody in that family does, and that's another thing I want to talk about because Conrad is on this pedestal for no good reason. It really annoys me. But the point is, he is very thirsty for Conrad's approval. He thinks Conrad is like the best ever. It's not to this level though, where he's like so explicitly like, I'm rooting for you, like Conrad's the one after all this BS, and he's like nasty about Jared. It's not really like that. This is crazy. First of all, what a sick statement. Like, love should be a challenge with your little sister. Like, what are you talking about? Second of all, you don't know what you're talking about. You know what kind of challenge that was? Third of all, how dare you? It's very much like this narrative that so many people seem to have in the story that Jeremiah is like this shallow, dumb person and they just like value him less, and it's like so upsetting, and all his like goodness and kindness and the things that he does just like doesn't matter because what, he doesn't go to an Ivy League school. Like, you guys are so elitist, right up there with Finch's fun. Like, and that brings me to my next point. I'm kind of a little bit of a team Stonrad, and hear me out. Steven worships Conrad so much. I think a lot of what he's talking about like is projection. Like, he's just like so in love with Conrad. He adores Conrad, and particularly in the show, he's kind of the only person who like Conrad really like genuinely communicates with. And I think Conrad in the show is the most likable. Actually, like kind of like one of the only times he's likable is when he's with Steven. And I kind of think that they should just like ride off into the sunset together with their Ivy League elitist BS and stop messing around with the immature kids. In the books, I kind of felt this vibe a little bit too. It was very much like more so Steven and Conrad were more of a pair, and like Jeremiah and Belly. And I feel this way. Like, I honestly, like, if anything, they can ship themselves off together. And I also think there's this element of something that a couple people brought up where Steven sees a lot of himself in Conrad, not just because they're similar, but because he too fumbled a girl who was like literally obsessed with him, idolized him, called her like a mistake, treated her poorly, and is now trying to get her back. And Steven's kind of like, well, hey, like if Conrad can get another shot with my sister after destroying her, maybe I can get an in with Taylor. And I will also say that Steven really does not deserve Jer Bear as a friend, and it makes me so angry, but Stonrad, fine. And one more question to everybody praising Steven for saying this, in addition to you like not having any examples of this like being true, how did we end up with Steven as like the authority on good relationships and on Conrad and Belly when like I thought you guys said that you weren't about like cheaters and homewreckers and all that? I thought that was your okay, right. So I keep seeing these really dumb takes about how Jeremiah was not jealous of Cam Cameron and he didn't care about Belly being with Cam and he was only jealous with Conrad, so this obviously proves their theory that Jeremiah only likes Belly as competition with Conrad, and that's a whole other can of worms that I think is just like so reductive. But this is actually so stupid and the fakest news, because Jer literally was jealous of Cam in both the books and the show, and Cam Cameron comes from Jeremiah saying that and like giving him a hard time. Some people actually think that Cam's name is Cam Cameron, which is so funny. But anyway, in the show we obviously see it in this scene. The Belly get in the car, no offense, but no, your name is Cam Cameron. Both boys are looking jealous here, obviously. This whole dinner scene, very obvious. This comes directly from the book. In the books too, you can see he gives Cam a hard time and is clearly jelly on more than one occasion. He does not want to watch Belly hooking up with Cam Cameron in the backseat of a minivan. Conrad really does want to go and like be a menace. This is like his idea, and I guess that's like the more suitable reaction to you guys. I don't know. Of course, Jer Bear makes friends with Cam Cameron because Jer Bear is friendly and sweet and makes friends with everyone, and Cam Cameron is a nice guy. He can't be mean to him because he likes Belly. Now, I will grant you, of course, Jeremiah is more jealous of Conrad Conrad, but that makes total sense. And I will say that part of it, I do certainly think, is because he knows Belly and he knows that Cam Cameron isn't really a serious thing for her, and she has a history of liking Conrad. That's two different things. Jeremiah is very respectful of her relationship with Cam overall, despite giving him a hard time at first because he was jealous. And this is because obviously he's not going to be nasty about Cam Cameron, because that just would be like a rude thing to do. He can like read the room. And please don't say he's not respectful of her relationship with Conrad, because she does not have a relationship with Conrad at this point. Conrad is actively seeing another girl and treating Belly poorly. And this is another element of like, of course Jeremiah is going to be like more supportive of Belly being with Cam Cameron when he likes her, because she doesn't have that history with Cam Cameron. And also Conrad literally treats Belly poorly. You act like Jeremiah like pulls this out of nowhere when he's correct. And obviously there's that element of like protectiveness for her, whatever. But yeah, of course he's jealous. That's kind of the premise. There's nothing sinister about him being jealous. Conrad is also jealous of both of them. Belly is jealous. We see this a lot throughout the books and the show. That's very normal. It's also very normal to realize the intensity of your feelings by being confronted with jealousy. That's normal. It's also literally what you're getting when you sign up to watch a show or read a book about a love triangle between two brothers that's literally just copy paste Twilight. Anyway, point is, he is nice to Cam, nice about Cam, sweet to Belly about this. And in this scene, which by the way, I love this scene, it's so cute. And he's like, well, poor Cam Cameron, after she tells him that they broke up, then he shoots his shot and scored. Period. Like right after that, he's very respectful about it, makes sure that she's not upset about it, that she feels good about it. Poor Cam Cameron, but hey, he's been waiting. Open, honest, straightforward. Scored. She reciprocates. Period. That's it. And I think that Cam also kind of represents this idea of Belly moving on from Conrad, where it's like, it's always been about Conrad. It's like, she can like other people too. So I think that whole thing makes total sense. And honestly, like, it's even clearer in the books, but even from like the first episode of the show, I think it's very clear that Jeremiah likes Belly from like that first moment that she's like the apple of his eye, his future wife after all. If you didn't pick up on that, that's a you problem, not a me problem. So Belly and Conrad's relationship, and Conrad as a love interest in general, skates by on this idea of infinity and of course this necklace. And I have never found this to be romantic in the slightest, particularly because of the way that this necklace is used. Very indicative of this tell don't show narrative with Bonrad, where we're told that they're meant to be an infinite but given no real reasons to show us why Conrad is a good love interest for Belly. And when I tell you this whole infinity theme makes even less sense in the books, and I'll explain why, I do think it's kind of equally trash in the show. So the first time we're introduced to this infinity concept is when Conrad draws the infinity symbol on her pancakes when they're kids and explains to her what it means. Now, this is something that is exclusively in the show. That doesn't even happen in the books. At least here you can kind of infer that there's some reason why infinity would mean something to Belly, right? And he gets her this necklace for her birthday, but doesn't give it to her, and she has to find it in a dirty contraceptive-filled top drawer after he made her cry on her birthday and ruined her sweet 16. Like, I don't find that romantic, but okay. Then she drunkenly confronts him about it, and he still doesn't admit to it and doesn't give her the necklace. And then this necklace steps into its true form and purpose as a piece of back and forth leverage that he passes back to her every time she's moving on from him. Conrad only presents Belly with this necklace for the first time following something that you all like to conveniently ignore and accompanied by a literal you up text. Conrad finds out at the party in season 1 that Jeremiah might be hooking up with Belly, and then and only then does he send her a text saying that he wanted to take her to the Deb ball, and it wasn't really just because his mom asked him, even though his mom did ask him, and that's why he asked her. He also makes no effort to end things with Nicole, the other girl that he's stringing along, and things only end between them because Nicole sees that text that he sent to Belly and ends things with him. Then Conrad watches Belly get into the car with Jeremiah, and later that night he sends her a literal you up text. She agrees to talk to him and makes it very clear to him on this doc that she's done with him and does not want him to text her anymore. And then and only then does he present her with this necklace. She doesn't take it though. But I guess you all were too busy talking about how Jeremiah is a manipulative narcissist to acknowledge this sequence of events. Either way, the next time we see the necklace is at the start of season 2 when Belly makes it clear to him that she cannot proceed in a relationship with him, this time because she doesn't want to hurt Jeremiah and doesn't want to get in between them him right now. Conrad, by the way, does not care about Jeremiah's feelings in this situation. I'm tired of everybody saying that he did. He didn't care. It was only because Belly said, no, I can't do this. He wanted to, and I don't buy the narrative about how he didn't know, because like I said, he found out from Steven that Belly might be hooking up with Jeremiah and only then made the decision to text her. So anyway, so she keeps the necklace, gives it back to him at prom, and then the next time we see it is in his dorm room in season 2. We do not see this necklace again. He makes no effort to give it back to her until the end of season 2, when she once again has made it clear that she is moving on, and he once again forces this necklace on her, and she doesn't want to take it, and he's like, no, take it. Okay, so that's the show. Every time it's literally just when she's making it clear that she cannot proceed with him or she's moving on in some way. Now, this makes even less sense in the book, but is just as bad and worse in other ways, because we don't even hear about this infinity concept until the second book, when she finds it in his dorm room, and then she just assumes that it is for her. And she says, it was infinity. I knew it was for me. And she puts it on because that's normal, because she just knows that it's for her. But we're never told why she knows that it's for her until like 200 pages later, when it comes up again, and it's still not demonstrated or shown to us why infinity is like a thing. And again, when Cornroach catches Belly and Jeremiah smoochy and gets all hurt about it. But again, remember, in the books, Belly and Conrad do not have a relationship. And he's like, so you like Jeremiah now? If you like Jeremiah, why are you wearing my necklace? And she's like, I found it when we were packing up your dorm room. It doesn't mean anything. And he's like, you know what it means, but we don't know what it means. And she's like, I don't. And then she says, but of course I did. I remembered when he'd explained the concept of infinity to me. But we never saw him do this. We still, at this point, have not seen him do this, and we never see him do it. And then he's like, give it back. It's not yours. I never gave it to you, and takes the necklace back. And then he says, go to Jeremiah. He's the one who wants you. I don't. I never did. Again, really softened him in the show, bailed him out a million times. Again, Belly and Conrad have not had a relationship at this point. He has never claimed her as his girlfriend or admitted he had feelings for her. And then when this prince finally presents her with this necklace, it's literally the morning of her wedding to his brother. And then finally he's like, do you remember infinity? You have to take it. I just can't keep it anymore. Like, you're kidding me. And then the one other time infinity is mentioned is the one that really sends me with this quote that everybody likes to romanticize. So no, he didn't give me flowers or candy. He gave me the moon and the stars. Infinity. And this is like so embarrassing, because this is Belly romanticizing her rich situationship, showing up empty-handed on Valentine's Day and taking her to her front lawn. Like, you absolutely have to be kidding me. This is infinity? And he didn't give her the necklace here, and we're supposed to assume that he had it because it was supposed to be for her birthday present. He waited until the morning of her wedding to his brother, and we never even saw why infinity matters to them. And again, not to yuck somebody's yum, but this concept of infinity, this theme that their relationship is supposed to float by on, is very indicative of Bonrad as a whole. This tell, don't show narrative about how they're meant to be and forever and they're infinite, with nothing to actually show us why. Yes, you're all absolutely correct. Infinity isn't real. It's just a concept. And the way it's used throughout the show and the books, this isn't romantic at all. He doesn't even give it to her. It's used as leverage in both cases. It's breadcrumbing and manipulative, honestly. And just a little side note, just between you and me, it's so corny. You kind of had to be there, but in like 2009, 2010, when these books were coming out, infinity was so oversaturated that like you couldn't swing a bat without hitting an infinity necklace or an infinity symbol, and it was just like so overplayed and corny, and I've always felt that way. I do not think it's particularly romantic. I think it's very basic and cringe. But even if you don't feel that way, this concept and the necklace, it's not used in any kind of romantic way throughout the series. Like, this just isn't romantic. This is embarrassing. Like, okay, I got it. He gave you infinity and bad self-esteem. See, the thing is, my friend, this is really funny, number one, but Belly and Conrad might as well just be a nickname, pseudonym for Bella and Edward, because that's exactly what it is. And very often I am saying the exact same. I have been saying this for quite some time now, but as most of you probably know, I spend a good amount of time talking about Twilight. And the thing is, even when I'm not talking about Twilight, 9 times out of 10, I'm still talking about Twilight. And the fandom arguments are almost exactly the same. This Bonrad is absolutely this, absolutely Bellward, older, brooding Dillwagon who views the main character as like a child and a kid, but then conveniently pursues her. She's obsessed with him, idolizes him. They don't have any relationship development. They're never even friends. The entire romance skates by on this concept of forever or infinity that we're not shown at all, and her worship of this guy. And then this, of course, is absolutely sweet, dependable best friend with a biblical J name who calls her Bells, that is in love with her, understands her, can read her mind, is sunshine and smiles. They share an emotional connection, spend a lot of time in cars, very forthright and direct about his feelings, affectionate. They're big on hand holding and hugging and spinning around. Like they're very into it. And she is in love with biblical J name too, but she's still, of course, idealizing and hung up on brooding Dillwagon. Polly, where have you been? Mr. Cam Cameron is the harmless third dude who is a fun little side character, but never really had a shot. Something like a Mike Newton, if you will. And then we have the typically girly, fashionable, blunt, funny, like other girl's friend who is overhated for being a teenage girl and is really not so very different than Belly or Bella, but alas, even if she's often correct and just being a regular teenage girl. And then we also have the two parents who are longtime childhood best friends themselves, and then their children connect. Did you know that Charlie and Billy have been best friends since childhood? Because they have. So all this to say that you are correct, and the fandom, like, arguments and discourse are so absurdly similar. It's so funny and kind of haunting, but here I am anyway.
I would just like to remind you that no one can shame you for being in a place that they also are. Okay, so for example, like, I show up to things really early and I'm like, that's so embarrassing. The only people that know are people who are also there early. So, or like, I really don't understand how like men will shame women, being like, she like put out on the first date. Like, bro, so did you. So did you. So like, how, you know?
Sorry I didn't respond to your text. I saw it, thought to myself, that's overwhelming. I'll respond later. And then I completely forgot, and it will happen again.
As you've probably heard by now, Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt have been arrested on 2 counts each of aggravated child abuse. A few people commented on my last video saying that they didn't know who Ruby Franke is, and so I'll just do a little recap of who she is. But you can also check out my playlist of family vloggers. There's tons of videos on there about it. Ruby Franke and her husband Kevin had a really popular YouTube channel called 8 Passengers. They have 6 kids together. They're Mormon. They are family vloggers. And they had 2.3 or so million followers. On their vlogging channel, they made a lot of questionable parenting decisions that, you know, became very controversial, all the while exploiting their children and making money, profiting off of all of these videos. So for example, one time the teacher called Ruby to say that her kindergarten kid didn't bring her lunch, and Ruby refused to bring the lunch to the school. She wanted to teach the 6-year-old a lesson. She often used food as punishment and said like dinner was a privilege and things like that. She sent her teenage son, Chad, to a troubled teen industry like camp for months. Then shortly after he returned, she took away his bedroom for 7 months, making him sleep on the floor and on a beanbag chair. She took away the kid's privacy as punishment, like removing bathroom doors and things. She took away her 2 youngest kids' Christmas as punishment. She just made a lot of parenting decisions where people are like, you're being too harsh, and it was just inappropriate. Ruby then joined Jodi Hildebrandt doing this Moms of Truth Facebook page and joining this thing called Connections, where they're like supposedly being parenting gurus, giving life advice that was also very controversial. The 2 of them would give really damaging parenting advice and, you know, being really just, they called everybody distorted. They said anything that they didn't agree with was wrong and distorted. It was really kind of cultish. And it's just really insane that now Ruby had turned into like this parenting guru after everybody saw online how she was not a good parent. Her oldest daughter, Sherry, who's 20, I believe, went off to college and then realized that, you know, it was all craziness that she grew up in and cut off contact with her mother. And last night, Ruby and Jody were both arrested. Apparently, Sherry said that family has been trying for years to get CPS and police involved because there's abuse going on at home. According to Reddit, 20 plus officers responded last night to the scene with representatives from federal, state, and local levels. We don't know the specifics of what led to the arrest, but I'm sure that information will all come out soon. That's just a really short synopsis, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. We knew that something bad had to have happened to warrant, you know, Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt to be both arrested, and I read that Ruby is being held without bail. So something bad must have really happened, and Fox 13 has been reporting new details on what went down. Apparently, police say that the children were found with severe malnourishment, neglect, and abuse at Jody's house. So apparently what happened was one of the children climbed out of a window at around 10:50 a.m. Wednesday and ran to a neighbor's home for help. Now, why were they at Jody's house? I don't know. Some people have rumored that maybe Ruby and Jody are a little closer than just business partners. Whatever. Either way, the children were in Jody Hildebrandt's home. The child knocked on the door and asked for food and water, but the neighbor noticed duct tape on the child's ankles and wrists and called the police. The juvenile appeared to be emaciated and malnourished with open wounds and duct tape around the extremities, which is why they're saying it was like severe, which is why it's aggravated child abuse. After the first child was taken to hospital, another child was discovered in the home and was found to be malnourished as well. Now, I believe that these are the two youngest children, but I haven't seen any confirmation. A search warrant was obtained by police, and during the search of the home, evidence was located consistent with markings found on the juvenile. Ruby was on a YouTube video being filmed at Jody's house just days before, so police therefore concluded that Ruby must have known about this abuse and therefore was charged as well. So the 4 younger children are in the care of DCSF right now. Hopefully they'll be able to go to family members. Also, apparently Ruby refused to speak with police and instead just lawyered up, and she's being held without bail.
All these takes I see about Jeremiah are actually so ugly and weird that it kind of does make me concerned for humanity a little bit. I'm not even going to lie, because I was just rereading the books again, even though I read them recently. I was reading them again for research and for videos, and I'm just flabbergasted that people like in the books and the show like view Jeremiah as some kind of antagonist. It's like the strangest thing, and not like the heart of the series as he is, because that's what he is. It's one thing if you like Conrad or your team Conrad or whatever, or you think Conrad is a better love interest for Belly, which again, like I don't relate to. I'm not even gonna lie, like you're not, I don't relate to at all. That I do find concerning in a different way as well. I'm not even gonna lie, but like if you can admit that Conrad is really not any kind of perfect love interest and you can admit to that and you still like him because that's your man, I can totally respect that. But it's just so weird that people like find Jeremiah to be like the villain or antagonist in the story, number one, or like a roadblock or like speed bump in the Belly Conrad love story, as if like Jelly isn't also like the heart of the series, and as if like book Jelly didn't carry the series in the same way that show Jelly does. And it's just like so weird, and it's just like I don't even know where to start. I have so much to say. Should I start with the whole like, oh, he just wants to compete with Conrad thing, when like he actively hates doing that? Like this is, and that's like such a huge part of like why so much of his like desires and wants and things that he likes are suppressed, because he hates doing that. Like he doesn't take anything seriously because nobody takes him seriously. Nobody ever did. Literally the way that everybody in his life like neglects him in favor of Conrad, and then that he ultimately loses the people that didn't. It's just so, ooh, and like book 3, as much as I hate it, like Jeremiah is still the most sympathetic character in that book, like by a long shot, for sure. Like it's still just like absolutely heartbreaking. And it's like, I'm so flabbergasted. Every time I see one of these like Jeremiah slanderous, it's so weird. Really? Like you read these books? Or even watch the show, even though, like, again, like, it was so clear that they had to reinvent Conrad and make him, like, more sympathetic in the show. Like, you really read these books or watched these shows and you came to the conclusion that you should be rooting against Jeremiah? it's so weird. Like, it's the way that, like, the mental gymnastics for Conrad's demonstrated bad behavior, which is, like, okay. But then, like, you'll reach into the sky to make Jeremiah the villain. Like, even if you don't ship him with Bella and you don't love Jelly and you, like, prefer Bonrad, again, I don't relate to you at all. But it's so weird. Like, the mirror ball, the golden retriever, and you have to think about what a golden retriever is. It's so weird. I was rereading and rewatching and I was like, it's so weird. He gave love and appreciation and made people feel valued and loved so freely, and he, like, almost never got it back. It's if you hate him, you're honestly just, like, not kin. And I can't relate to you, because it's so weird. It's like, do you root for Jafar when you watch Aladdin? I'm sorry, but that's like how I feel. Like I said, like, I can be sympathetic towards Conrad for reasons. I can. But, like, people really rooting for him and rooting against Jer Bear, like, it's just not there. I tried to see it your way. I tried to see him as, like, some kind of villain, and, like, he doesn't really have a connection with Bella, he doesn't really love her, and, like, it's always been Bonrad. It's not there. I'm telling you, it's not there. I think there's something that a lot of people are just overlooking about Junior Mint, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of sick of hearing about this bear. And I did an extensive breakdown a while ago on Junior Mint in the books, which I will link in the caption, and I explained how it's nice that we find out literally in these letters that were published years after the fact and not even part of the original books that Conrad supposedly spent money trying to win her the polar bear. Despite that, it still was just a consolation prize, and he did go there to see the girl, and that's the only time that they spend alone together in Belly's flashbacks. And I don't see this as any kind of, like, token of Conrad's sainthood. It's not sinister, but it's nothing special, right? And here's the thing that people are overlooking about the bear. Yes, I do think it is significant that Belly chooses the giraffe in present day on the boardwalk, despite Conrad saying, like, you could get another Junior Mint, because, like, why would she get another Junior Mint? And yes, I do think the giraffe is supposed to be representative of Jeremiah, and yes, I think it's really cute that Mildred the giraffe was in her bag in the finale, and yes, I do think it's cringe that Conrad said, why didn't you want another Junior Mint? And then she was like, I'm not 10 years old anymore, Conrad. But more than that, there's also just no reason that Belly would want another polar bear, because she was on a mission for a different bear, a Jer Bear, and she was not going to stop until she got that polar bear. Absolutely not. No, thank you. And it will always be funny that you guys claim that she didn't want Jeremiah when she was ready to leave Clownrad at Brown. She was like, no, I don't think he's coming though. She's like, it's been an hour, Jer. I think we should just go. She could not have cared less. I need you guys to be so serious. She went outside and started panicking because Jer Bear was not there. I don't care about infinity polar bears. And you know, the funny thing, the really funny thing is that she doesn't even choose Conrad in the book. She chose Jeremiah. He called it off, and then she settles for Cornroach years later in that pathetic one-page endgame. They were never even in a relationship. Anyway, that book didn't happen. Nobody cares about season 3, and even if that book did happen, it's still embarrassing for you to come in my comments and start talking about, like, Bonrad is endgame. Do you know how embarrassing that endgame is? So they got married years later on the beach, and they named their baby Daisy, and then one of their other babies, Millie, like the giraffe. So deal with that. Also, since I know you all like reading into things, why don't you read into the fact that the song that was playing when Belly was looking for Jer Bear was "No one can see me like you do, no one can see you like I do," and then Cornroach was "Exile. You never learned to read my mind." Okay, goodbye. So today on Bonrad Takes That I Hate, now that Jelly is properly gelling in the show to soothe themselves, some irate Bonrads are claiming that in the books, it's very clear that this story is not a love triangle, but Belly and Conrad's love story, and Jeremiah is just an obstacle or a roadblock, which is only slightly less insane than the Jeremiah is the antagonist takes, but still nonsensical and offensive for other reasons. And first, I just want to say, like, obviously everybody sees stories differently, and the reason I'm countering it is because it's very much being used as a way to discredit the jellyfish population and the Jer Bear stan population, and it's just not going to work because it's pretty much impossible to prove that true in the show, right? So then they look to the books and are like, see, but in the books, like, it's very clear, like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. You guys tell, like, straight up falsehoods about these books. Because let's just look factually and structurally at what happens in these books, not even getting into Conrad and his behavior and why people don't like it. So in book 1, we are told that Belly is closer to Jeremiah. They're best friends. They spend more time together. She actually spends lots of time alone with him. We see that in their flashbacks. She has more flashbacks with Jeremiah. We don't ever actually see Belly and Conrad be in a relationship in these books. They do not have a relationship the way that they do in the show. There's no relationship. Half of this book, the second book, is told from Jeremiah's perspective. She chooses Jeremiah at the end of this book and remains in a relationship with him until the last chapter of the last book. And not because she chose Conrad, but because Jeremiah calls it off. And not because we see Belly and Conrad enter a relationship after that. We don't. Reminding you, we do not ever see Belly and Conrad be in a relationship throughout these books. We also do not see them be friends. We learn that years later, on the last page of the last book, and not that many years later, the last page of the last book, that pathetic one-page endgame that they got married, on the last page, and the romance and redemption that you all gush about supposedly lies in these letters that Conrad wrote to her that were not even originally included in the books. They were published years after the fact, so not even like actually originally part of the story, and they're not good. Okay, we're gonna dissect them, it's gonna happen, but I mean, if you're gonna use it, you gotta be serious. The point is, if your argument is this was never a love triangle and Jeremiah is not a significant character, a roadblock, an obstacle, that is spectacularly bad storytelling if that's the intentional narrative, that this isn't a love triangle. But since you all like to use what Jenny Han posts on her Instagram stories as law, in fact, she literally said that she almost changed the ending before writing the third book. So Jelly was written intentionally. We have so much to discuss, and we will discuss it, about the misuse of the term unreliable narrator, about Jeremiah's layers and the total misinterpretation of them, and about those letters. And we will discuss all that. But for right now, I will just say that without Jeremiah, if Jeremiah was not in these books, this book, like the entire series, the first book, would be at the bottom of the did not finish trash pile for so many people. There's a reason why so many people got to this book, the last one, after reading the first two and were like, oh my god, I was supposed to be rooting for Conrad? Because regardless of Endgame, Jelly was the better written couple in a lot of ways. Jeremiah was the more compelling and sympathetic character in a lot of ways. And that's kind of the gag when people always say, like, can't wait for Jeremiah's downfall. The thing is, why do you need Jeremiah to fall down for Conrad to swoop in? Why must he be brought down for Conrad to be a good love interest? If he's Belly's soulmate and this is their story, why does that need to happen in order for your story to happen? The only thing that Conrad has going for him narratively throughout these books is Belly's idealization of him. Her obsession. It's nothing in his actions. It just isn't there. And it's not that Belly didn't love Jeremiah or wasn't in love with him. She very much was. And in truth, even with this ridiculous book, chose him right up until the very end. So to say that this wasn't a love triangle or that Jeremiah wasn't significant when he was featured more and spent more time with Belly, and we heard so much more good about him than we ever did about Conrad, and we're shown so much more good about Conrad, just doesn't make sense. Like, that's just factually not what it is. Like, if you view this as Belly and Conrad's love story, that's fine, but that's just like a crazy take, honestly, because that's just like narratively not what we were told or shown. And it really is just like so sadly ironic that so much of Jeremiah's life was shaped by being neglected and discarded and overlooked and ignored, oftentimes in favor of Conrad, in a much deeper and more expansive way than I think a lot of people realize. It certainly was not just their father, it was everyone around him, and in every significant way. And he's never really acknowledged for his emotions or complexity, or acknowledged or rewarded narratively or celebrated for his goodness and his love and his demonstrated loving and good behavior. The things that factually he provided that Conrad just never could and never did. And that people view him that way, reading the story too, as insignificant and a roadblock, and that the love that he had for Belly and the love that he and Belly shared and his existence is insignificant, just a roadblock in Belly and Conrad's story. Despite the fact that Conrad never did anything to earn Belly's adoration or to earn being her ideal love interest, and that he ultimately loses what he loves most to Conrad in the end. It's, you know, Belly and Conrad's love story or Jeremiah's tragedy. I don't know, sick and twisted. Point being, there is no story without Jeremiah. Jeremiah is the heart. Jelly is so much of the heart, and if Jeremiah and Belly were the focus of the story, like Conrad didn't exist, I mean, like if this was just a Jeremiah and Belly story, I would absolutely love it. It would be beautiful. I would be rooting for them. If it was a story about Conrad and Belly and there was no Jeremiah, I never would have finished the book. And a lot of people feel that way. Truly.
Let's talk about compulsory heterosexuality, or COMPHET for short, which is the theory that heterosexuality is assumed in individuals from birth and from then on enforced in those individuals. Essentially, COMPHET is heterosexual until proven otherwise, which delegitimizes queer identity and makes it much harder for folks to identify queerness in themselves. COMPHET is most commonly used when discussing the experiences of lesbians and other queer women who have had to fight back on the notion that women innately want, need, and present for men. We'll hear the term often in people's coming out stories, mine included. However, compulsory heterosexuality negatively impacts individuals of all genders and sexual orientations because it tells all of us that we should be operating within an innate binary of men and women. What decreases COMPHET? Visibility and support. The more types of people we see, the more stories we hear, and the more equality we are granted, the more we push back on the idea that the only viable existence is a heterosexual one. A fair few of you have asked for a simple explainer on the differences between bisexuality versus pansexuality versus polysexuality. All three apply to individuals whose attraction to others is not limited by their gender. Bisexuality is the attraction to two or more genders and is actually the most commonly reported orientation within the LGBTQ+ community. However, there is a common misconception that bi means men and women. Therefore, many queer people monolabel it better implies attraction to non-conforming or non-binary individuals. This is where polysexual, not to be confused with polyamorous, comes in. Polysexual is defined as the attraction to multiple genders, but not necessarily all of them. Meanwhile, pansexuality is often referred to as the gender-blind attraction. Pansexuals can be attracted to anyone of any gender because the qualities and characteristics they are attracted to have nothing to do with gender. So those are the definitional distinctions between the three. But in my opinion, the only distinction that actually matters is if one resonates better with you, your attractions, and your experiences. Understanding what the process of receiving gender-affirming care actually looks like is one of the best ways to push back against this myth that children and their families are impulsively jumping into irreversible medical procedures. So let's talk about it. Gender-affirming care is endorsed by the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics and is a comprehensive model of healthcare not limited to hormones and surgery. Prior to puberty, this care involves building a supportive environment without medical intervention, often for years, for a child questioning their identity. At the onset of puberty and following, quote, a long-lasting period of nonconformity or dysphoria, they may begin pubertal suppression to delay the physical effects of puberty. Following a period of suppression and with the input of family, medical professionals, and therapists, a teen could then start gender-affirming hormone therapy. This is typically not considered until 16. And if an individual decides to opt into gender-affirming surgeries, these happen only after years of gender-affirming care and are extremely uncommon under the age of 18. So no child, teen, or family is rushing into this process. Have you heard of Polari, the lost gay language used in the 1900s to communicate when homosexual acts were illegal? Polari is a mix between Romance languages and several different types of slang, and while not exclusive to them, was very commonly used by gay men in the United Kingdom between 1920 and 1960. Polari impacts queer vocabulary to this day. Several of the words that are believed to come from Polari are butch, trade, and camp. And I'm borrowing this from my mutual rainbow history class, but if I were to say bona tu vada your dolly eeks, essentially I'm saying it's good to see your pleasant faces.
If you are anything like me, then watching Mother Nature force these two old perverts to walk their way out of the desert this weekend brought a little bit of joy to your life. That old saying, birds of a feather, doesn't even do these two justice. And of course, we know the back of that truck is also full of other men who think this is the coolest moment of their lives, but after all, they are not on the menu. You guys know Diplo very well, mostly for the half dozen allegations leveled against him for his alleged pursuit, grooming, SA, and predation of young Black teenagers. And of course, illegal tactics enacted to destroy them. Some women who you know, some who you don't know. Azealia Banks, pictured here, famously said that she's grateful to Diplo for seeking her 17-year-old self out of MySpace and giving her a musical career. However, she said that she had to give up some teenage to get there. I, of course, have discussed him at length here and on my Substack. But if you want some up-to-date content on hashtag surviving Diplo, head to Becca Day's page for the Downfall of Diplo playlist. Because after all, I'm not here to talk about Diplo. I'm here, of course, to talk about him. Chris Rock's own scandalous history may not be as well known because, let's face it, most of you guys weren't born when his scandals were going down. So let's consider this a little series where I come in with a little refresher to remind you guys of the most heinous people who should have absolutely been canceled 25 years ago, yet who you provided collective forgiveness, allowing them to thrive in decades-long careers where they're getting $40 million Netflix deals, Verizon commercials, and Oscars hosting gigs because you guys refuse to just cancel someone and throw away the keys. Gather round, children. The year is 1999 and Chris has hired a well-known criminal, an FBI-stamped criminal, private investigator Anthony Pellicano, as a fixer to help him literally and figuratively destroy a woman who he says is shaking him down. Anthony's Achilles heel, of course, is that he not only illegally wiretapped, among other things, the enemies of his clients, he also recorded all of his own conversations, which of course, once the boys got him, were subpoenaed, captures evidence and released to the public, revealing a very dark and evil side of what men in Hollywood will do in an attempt to keep their careers and keep power. In the 30-minute long recording, Chris is recorded saying, "I'm effed. I'm better off getting caught with needles on my arm. Way better. Needles with pictures. There's Chris Rock shooting H. Much better blow to the career. What's worse than a drug scandal? An SA scandal." Part 2 is coming up. Part 2 of my Chris Rock cultural reminder for the girls of 2023, trigger warning, sexual assault. In 1998, Chris Rock was accused by Hungarian model Monica Zabrita of sexual assault and fathering her child. Note here that Chris actually got married in 1996 and stayed married until 2016 for 20 years. 2 years into his marriage is when this scandal broke out, and at the time he said that he and his wife were separated on a break. After their divorce in 2016, he was speaking to press or whatever and basically admitted to being a cheater. Anyway, Anthony Pellicano is someone that you call not when you're looking for justice or looking for help in navigating a scandal. He's someone you would call when you had a threat or a very big problem that needed to be handled. At their base, his tactics were illegal background checks and illegal wiretaps, which would then kickstart blackmail, harassment, stalking, property damage, physical threats of violence, actual physical violence that his clients had indirectly ordered from him and his network. Again, here you have some very sinister tactics at play, some small things like background checks that would then reveal information to blackmail people into silence on, to literal, actual physical violence, all in an effort to get people to drop their lawsuits or their stories they're writing on his clients, who were, of course, the biggest predators in town. To handle Monica, Chris called Anthony, and part of their 30-minute long conversation that, of course, was recorded by Anthony is featured in FX's Sin Eater, which you can stream on Hulu. I will play some edited clips from the show shortly, and I will also include some written transcriptions that were featured in press at the time throughout the rest of my story. Trigger warning here, obviously, is rape and violence against women.
I'm going to read this to you. I'm not supposed to have this thing. Do you understand that?
Right.
I'm not supposed to have this thing, but I got it.
Nobody knows.
See, any rape victim is confidential. You can't get it. There's no record of it. You understand?
Oh, boy, I've been so set up.
No, but I need to know from you, honey.
What do you need to know?
Did she on her thighs? You said you had a rub on her, brother.
I had a rubber on. I probably took it off right when I was getting ready to come. Probably kissed her ass,
So, you got to change your story now. The wonderful thing about this is that the police department didn't believe her.
Once, you're accused of rape, it's just fucked. You're just fucked.
I know, that's why I want to blacken this girl up. Totally.
You are just
Do you understand?
fucked.
Yeah, I know, but I want to make her out to be a lying scumbag, manipulating cocksucker. That's what I want.
At the time of that recording, Chris is 34 years old, my age. Please do notice just how nonchalant he is as to what Anthony is describing. A woman filed a police report for being raped. The cops didn't believe her. Those cops handed off her confidential police report about her sexual assault to a man who was paying them, who was also working on behalf of her alleged rapist. That man is now bringing this report to her alleged rapist to help strategize. That's 5. Strategize ways to ruin her, to blacken her, to destroy her. A call to Anthony was a call into his network, and I have yet to even reveal to you guys just how absolutely sinister it is and how far they will go. The network created space, created distance, created hand washing, created indirect ways of contact that intentionally remove people from culpability. This network included everyone from telephone company workers who were tapping phones and being paid by him, to computer programmers, to cops at the Beverly Hills PD and LAPD who were being paid by him, to mafia members and hitmen. It's important for me to state and remind you guys that Chris, just as a listener of this phone call that you heard, has no legal implication or no legal fault here. That call also was a starting point for them to strategize what his story would be. And we do hear a few stories. We'll get into it in part 3. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to part 3 of my Chris Rock cultural reminder for the girls of 2023. Trigger warning throughout all this, unfortunately, will be rape and sexual assault. And a reminder for those that are new here, this is just as much a story about rape and sexual assault allegations as it is about the length that powerful people in Hollywood will go to and the access they will attain to make sure a story, whether it is true or not, never sees the light of day, people. So 1, and I just love this photo, so I'm going to keep using it. After the allegations of sexual assault, the ensuing pregnancy, and the birth of a daughter, Monica files a paternity suit against Chris. This paternity suit triggers Chris to hire the services of Anthony Pellicano. If you don't know who I'm talking about, please go back to parts 3, 2, and 1. Or parts 2 and 1. This is part 3, right? The refresher here, of course, is that in 1998, the year of the alleged assault, Chris was 2 years into a 20-year-long marriage that only ended in 2016. At the time, however, of the alleged assault, Chris had said that he and his wife were separated at the time. Although when he got divorced officially, he was basically saying that he was actually someone who was just generally unfaithful in his marriage. On the tape of the phone call where Chris and Anthony are figuring out ways to manage Monica, Anthony says, "We're going to get her one way or another," and then asked, "Does your old lady know what's going on?" Chris says, "No, she thinks it's over, put it that way. She knows of it." That does not sound very separated to me, in my opinion, but you will also see through the course of this video the things that Chris says on tape when he thinks he only has an audience of one do run counter to what he says in public and in court. Again, the alleged assault happened in 1998, and we don't hear anything of it as members of the public until 10 years later, until 2008, when Anthony is literally on trial and Chris is being called up as a witness and their phone recordings are being used as evidence. At this point, again, we have no other information other than what is on the recordings. We have not heard Monica's side of the story, and until this court case, we did not know Monica even existed. 10 years of silence. Chris has told multiple stories of his time with Monica. One dismissing her as a girl he picked up in the hotel and just simply had sex with. However, on the recordings, just Anthony, his details are specific to them going out on a very long date where he knew they'd be recognized by people. He said, "I know the night we went to the Ivy, which is a restaurant here, that she had on white pants. I only noticed because my wife's real classy and subdued, and I'm out here with a girl with big and white pants. It's just, I know people were like, hey." He goes on to tell Anthony that after the Ivy, he took her to Guy Oseari's house, who's Madonna's manager, for a dinner party with Madonna, Elizabeth Shue, and Elizabeth Shue's baby, and then admits to having consensual sex with her at the Beverly Hills Hotel. In my opinion, of course, it's a little bit of a gap between some girl he met in a hotel and brought upstairs to have sex with versus this sort of long date that he describes to Anthony that involves them being out together as a couple in very public places as well as very private places like the private home of Madonna's manager for dinner with Madonna and Elizabeth Shue. That, in my opinion, adds more ground to the relationship than what obviously is being said publicly. Also, and it's not included here, but if you watch my last video where the recording is of Chris explaining very clearly how he finished and exited the intercourse situation, he is responding to prompts from Anthony, prompts from the police report where Monica had mentioned in the report that she had kept a sample of on a Kleenex tissue and kept it in her freezer. Once that element came to light in the court case in 2008, you see a very 2008 media response, almost as if to paint her as crazy for collecting it and holding on to it and storing it, as if evidence is not important in cases like this. Anyway, the only real thing we know here is that sometime in 1999 or 2000, Chris and Monica reached a confidential financial agreement. We know that because in 2012, 14 years after the alleged assault and 4 years after the court case, Chris goes on to Howard Stern and blabs about her indirectly, breaking their confidentiality agreement, which opens up a whole new lawsuit and gives us more details. In terms of the blabbing, it was some unfunny story about a scammer that he met that the FBI is aware of, a scammer who, sought out, seeks out famous, rich rich men to trap them with babies, and men get caught up in these traps, and the whole time the scammer is pregnant with a Nigerian's baby, and they try to sue the man to get paternity, and that is the scammer and the Nigerian pimp scam they have. I need to say this really quickly before this runs out. I have not ever heard Chris make a joke about how horrible European American or Eastern European women are. For some reason, it's Nigerians and his just like endless campaign against Black women. Anyway, the Hollywood Reporter covered this lawsuit, and it is the first time we're actually hearing any of Monica's statements, because lo and behold, the first paternity suit from what is now 14 years ago was filed as Jane versus John Doe. Monica had said via court docs, court filings, that Chris had attacked her and attempted to force her to perform oral sex on her on their first date, and that a week later the two went out, and that on that other date, after that date, that's when the forced intercourse happened. This is me talking now because I know someone's gonna watch this and be like, hold up, he almost attacked her the first time and then she went back to him. Here's a scenario that helps me make sense of that, which is the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, you mean a lot to me, listen, I'll take you out on a real date. We'll go to the Ivy. We'll have a full day, me and you, just us out in public. I promise you, I tell you, we can even go to Guy Fieri's house. Hey, do you want to go to dinner with Madonna? Anyway, in this, we also hear for the first time in what is now 14 years, the tactics that Anthony enacted on Monica, which included having her house broken into and pictures of her daughter being stolen. In regards to the actual paternity test from now over 14 years ago, Chris was not the father and is not the father. However, the lawsuit does raise doubts about that because there were concerns about the handling of the sample, including peculiar circumstances where the attorney had jumped out of the car very quickly, prematurely, to deliver samples to the lab, which then destroyed the chain of control, which means that the samples were not being watched the entire time to ensure no tampering. Oddly enough, another woman had come out a couple years later accusing Chris of fathering her son and also talking about similar poor handling of a sample. Chris and his wife, which is, you'll never catch me doing a joint statement with a man. Chris and his wife called this woman a liar, said she has an extensive criminal record. However, Chris never denied having a relationship with her, which is what it says up there. So we never know. That's them. He has a type. Anyway, back to her lawsuit. So Monica tried to lump in his comments on Howard Stern, which were the breach of contract, breach of confidentiality, as well as his testimony from the trial a few years earlier and some of the allegations from the break-ins, trespassing, etc. Chris's team had argued that the statute of limitations had ran out on most of those things, because here we are literally like 14 years later. Of like 11 claims she brought up, like 10 were dismissed except confidentiality, and her and Chris negotiated a new confidentiality settlement, which per both lawyers, they were both very happy with. I, of course, do not know everything Monica has been through. Obviously, the police handling of her rape police report, the break-ins, the theft of her property, all those things are absolutely sinister. But it's nothing compared to one writer's experience at the hands of Pelicanos Network. Part 4 is coming up. Good morning and welcome to part 4 of my Chris Rock cultural refresh for the girls of 2023. Trigger warning across the board of this video, especially out of all the videos, will be rape. You have been warned. Also, I will be burning in captions to this video because TikTok is not working. In part 3, we found out about the existence of a secret confidentiality agreement between Monica and Chris, one that was secret for 14 years until Chris broke it by telling a very unfunny joke on Howard Stern. Once it was broken, Monica took him back to court for that violation, but also for the things she learned a few years prior when Chris was on the stand during Anthony Pelicano's FBI trial, aka the things that were included in the one tape that we know of between Chris and Anthony, where Anthony is strategizing ways to ruin her, including illegally getting her confidential police report, as well as talking about ways to blacken her for the accusation. In court docs, Monica also gave us a few examples of which of Anthony's services had begun to rain down on her during that time, which was her house being broken into and personal objects, including photos of her daughter being stolen. Because of the statute of limitations, with the case being 14 years after her first accusation, she only was able to be awarded for the breach of confidentiality, and her and Chris agreed on a new settlement. A settlement for what? I don't know, but know that Monica probably is into her 25th year in a confidentiality agreement with this man, and I'm not sure why, because remember, rape charges were not filed against him, and he was not found guilty of rape, and also police allegedly felt that her rape claim was baseless, and also he was proven via DNA, although her lawyer says that there was some very shoddy handling of the blood sample for DNA of the child. He was proven to not be the father of this baby. So here we are 14 years in, having to renegotiate basically a settlement for what. Also remember at the time Chris said he was broken up with his wife, so this was just a 1 or 2 night stand in his eyes and in the eyes of the law. I would honestly say that Monica was very lucky to get off with just a break-in and some things stolen. Of course, so Monica cannot tell us what she really went through. However, Anita Bush can. She's one of the most famous victims of the network of Anthony Pellicano services and also the reporter that blew this entire thing open. You're going to see firsthand just how dangerous, evil, and violent the network that Anthony Pellicano provided his clients is. Clients who knew what services can be arranged. Services that are specific as to why they chose Anthony to handle their enemies. And enemies 100% included journalists reporting on his clients. So Anita is working at the LA Times when she's assigned to do some digging to do a story on Jules Nasso, who was a Hollywood producer from Staten Island who inexplicably keeps getting producer credit on all of Steven Seagal's films. There are allegations that he is attached to the Gambino crime family. Unbeknownst to her, Steven is a client of Anthony Pellicano. The story of these two deserves his own movie, and their relationship basically ends at the hand of the FBI, as it tends to do, where he says that the films he's invested in have flopped so much where he is owed up to $50 million, and he says that he is being shaken down by the mob. The court side with Steven. Jules takes a plea to do a year and a day in jail, and of the plea says it was an offer that he couldn't refuse, and we're not going to laugh at that because we don't laugh at criminals. Anyway, before Anita can even get her questions into Steven, she's being harassed at her home. Her car is broken into, her windshield is broken, there is a dead fish with a rose in its mouth left on the hood of her car, and there is a note that simply says, stop. The next day, she gets a call saying that a private investigator is going to rig her car to explode the next time she opens it. She goes to the FBI, who tells her that the dead fish is actually an old mafia death threat, and that they have intel that the fish was left there by a man named Alexander Proctor, who is coincidentally a subordinate of Anthony Pellicano, of course. Proctor ends up snitching, which leads to an FBI raid of Anthony Pellicano's office. In the office, feds find a locked safe that contains like 2 hand grenades and plastic explosives. In this raid, they also find thousands of pages of wiretap transcripts and thousands of hours of recorded conversations stored on computer disks. As this is happening, Anita's phones remain tapped, her computer is being hacked. Another reporter who was driving has a car road rage against them, pull out a gun, fire the empty gun at them, while also saying stop. At this time, her career is basically ruined and she goes into hiding. She moves in with her parents and then eventually flees to New York, where she lives out of a hotel. Even at the hotel, though, she's woken up in the middle of the night with her phone ringing. In February, so in her 8th month of terror, she comes back to Los Angeles. She is attacked by 2 men in a parking garage and brutally raped. The men give her a very clear message, which is to stop going to police or we're going to unalive you and your family. In 2023, almost 20 years later, she finally discusses the attack with a Hollywood reporter, saying that the attack was so brutal that it resulted in a concussion and back trauma that left her bedridden for 14 months and in a wheelchair for 5 years. She had to relearn how to walk again. Also, her hair turned gray and fell out. She developed stress blisters on her fingers, and 20 years later she'll park a mile away if it means avoiding a parking garage. She goes on to say that there is no doubt in her mind that her attack had something to do with her reporting on the Pellicano case, but does stop short of saying that Anthony had ordered it on her. Anthony, who is now 80 years old and cosplaying as like a nice harmless grandpa, was asked to respond to that revelation this year, to which he said, I had nothing to do with that, nor would I ever have anything to do with something so despicable. The delusion never leaves them. This is just a harmless man who would never have anything to do with anything when it comes to hurting a woman or targeting a woman or setting a woman up to be blackened and bruised and destroyed and have their private rape. Nothing. Also, while we're here talking about other terrible men in Hollywood who got to just grow into nice old manness without the debilitating back problems that come with being attacked, this is Michael Ovitz, who is the founder of CAA, also who did a stint as like the chairman of Disney, someone who had also hired Anthony Pellicano to torment Anita. He would target her by sending her threatening gifts, including items that she was allergic to. She ended up having to sue him. Up next, in the 5th and final part, we'll discuss if Chris's feelings towards the gravity of rape accusations has changed over the years. Here's the 5th and final post in my Chris Rock cultural refresh for the girls of 2023. Sorry for the delay here, I got sidetracked today. Thanks for finding me on Instagram to remind me. For this last post, we're just going to take a little walk down memory lane and discuss how Chris has spent the last 25 years of his very adult grown man life when it comes to the topic of rape and sexual assault. We, of course, start in 1998, where 33-year-old married Chris is able to successfully avoid any career-ending sexual assault allegations by enlisting the services of Anthony Pellicano, who was able to allegedly corral the accuser into silence with a confidentiality agreement. This takes care of a major problem and gives him 10 extra years of dip on his chip. In 2008, he was 43 years old, and whoopsie, some of his very shady dealings from the past with Anthony come to light. He, of course, is somberly called in as a witness to Anthony's federal wiretapping trial. This case, of course, was one that revealed the existence of that recording.
Just once, you're accused of rape, it's just fucked. You're just fucked.
I know, that's why I want to blacken this girl up. Totally.
You are just
Do you understand?
fucked.
Yeah.
Which ultimately was released to the people, to the press, and presumably to the woman who accused him, who he and Anthony are talking about in terms of ways to terrorize her. Chris is simply a witness. He's not charged with anything. He is not going to jail. However, his biggest fear is coming true. People now know he's been accused of sexual assault. Let's see how this affects his career. The next year, in 2009, at age 44, he goes on to Jay Leno and does his anti-rape defense stance against Roman Polanski. The press eat it up and cover it as some sort of crusade. For those that were too young to remember this was during the time when Roman Polanski was finally being arrested for SAing a 13-year-old girl like 35 years earlier. He was 43 at the time, and many people in Hollywood put their name pen to paper and signed petitions against his arrest. Martin Scorsese didn't want that man arrested. Anyway, Chris's career, now 3 years after the recordings were released, is fine, and he knows it. In 2011, he is 46 years old and cavorting on the couch at a round table with Louis C.K., Jerry Seinfeld, and Ricky Gervais. This moment lives in history, where Chris encouraged, relished, rolled like a pig in being called the N-word and hearing other white people use the N-word. On paper, I would have just called this the gathering of the creeps, because we have Jerry Seinfeld, who at 38 years old famously met a 17-year-old high school student in a park and began dating her publicly. And Louis C.K., famous for just wanting to take out his and in front of women he didn't know. If you want a Grammy, skip SoundCloud, just go right to Terrorizing Women. Also, here's Chris and Jerry in 2023 for Netflix. Looking like two old rich men about to be 60, just probably chit-chatting in disbelief how they spent their 30s remotely stressed at any accusations of them being a predator, creep, would ever ruin their career. It's giving look at us. Look at us. Anyway, in 2012, Chris is 47 years old, and he is now 4 years from the allegations being public with no impact to his career, and the dip is 100% on his chin. He unfortunately can't keep his almost 50-year-old mouth shut with some unfunny joke that is targeting / blaming women for something and inadvertently violates the terms of his confidentiality agreement with his first accuser. This sends him back to court, where we learn some dark details as to what Monica went through during the Pellicano era. They end up agreeing to a whole new settlement, and none of us still know what that settlement or who that settlement is for. In 2017, Chris is 52 years old and almost 20 years out from the initial accusation, and he is now boldly on stage making jokes about rape, saying that women cry rape when they want money. Note that he's doing this in 2017. At the exact same time, the man that called him the N-word to his face, to his smiling face, is facing several allegations of sexual harassment. When someone makes you smile like that, I guess you're loyal forever. Moving on, in 2022, 57-year-old Chris Ross is slapped across the face for trying to embarrass some man's wife in front of the entire world. Right after the slap, Chris inexplicably becomes a MAGA icon and also goes on the meek and mild offensive. Past interviews where he discusses being abused by bullies in his neighborhood surface. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with that information. Based off of his logic, presumably he is telling us because he is trying to get money, right? That is what he says people who have been assaulted do. People cry rape because they want money. Maybe he wants us to be sympathetic to school-age children who are having to navigate predatory, dangerous situations. Maybe he wants us to be specifically sympathetic to what young Black teenagers and students have gone through. Again, I am not sure what we should be doing with that information, if we should be taking it very seriously as I would take it, or take those allegations as seriously as he would take them. The caves are thawing. You Black women hate Black men. Damn, y'all want all Black men in prison and all Black women being with women until white men want to savage us. I'm going to respond back to you in a language that I hope you understand. You hate Black women. Chris Rock hate Black women. No Black women do anything to you or Chris Rock to make you hate Black women. For Chris Rock, no Black woman accuse Chris Rock of sexual assault. No Black woman file police report, which lead to maybe charge, which could lead to prison. No Black women accuse married man Chris Rock of being the father of their child. no black women do anything to potentially threaten Chris Rock's career. Chris Rock married 2 black women for 20 years who love Chris Rock, even though Chris Rock cheated on her all the fucking time. Me know that makes it even harder to understand why Chris Rock's 40-year plus career as a comedian chose to send her the most unfunny jokes at the expense of black women and our hair and our names and our bodies. Because me would think there has to be some reason for the vendetta or the origin of his hatred, but there's not. What else? Black women no required to support Chris Rock. Black women no required to support anyone who hates us. Chris Rock also no need support of black women. Chris Rock have support of famous rich white men in Hollywood who take care of Chris Rock. They love Chris Rock and they support Chris Rock because Chris Rock gives them something that they and their ancestors haven't been able to experience since 1865 or 1965, depending on how you cut it, which is the pure euphoric joy of racism without consequence. The ability to empty your lungs with the biggest laugh in support of your racism and hatred of black women. The ability, if you are one of his more favorite rich white men, to say the N-word, hard E-R, the R ringing at the end of it, on national TV without consequence. This is a part of my night where I'm just going to kindly ask the men in my comments, especially the black men, to get therapy, to, you know, resolve your issues with community and identity there, versus being in my comments complaining about all the imaginary bitches who are stealing from you and betraying you. If you are getting robbed, if you're getting caught slipping, it is not our fault. Also, you mentioned the word us here, which I have to assume is in regards to my Chris Rock video and him being a black man and you being a black man and you thinking that you're in community with Chris Rock because you're both black. Chris Rock is not in community with you, black man. He does not build a network of people who look like you and does not choose to keep people who look like you around him. Just so you know that. You are more likely to be like mauled to death by whatever dogs Ricky Gervais and like Louis C.K. acquire when Chris finally allows them to graduate from just saying the N-word and to explore whatever bloodlust that's within them. Morning, Mr. Harris. Harassment is not our thing. Harassment is your thing. You also came into the comments to accuse black women of theft, which is also your thing. Basically just here projecting, and I can read you back the docket numbers if you'd like me to. We blew onto this black woman's page like a cockroach blowing in the breeze to tell a black woman about how much you hate black women, to which I said, get therapy if you need someone else to talk to. Another black woman told you to fuck off. You became a victim. No one is coming to harass you. No one is coming to ruin you. You are filming your videos on a 1G potato phone in an unfinished basement with a shower curtain behind you. What are we going to ruin? Also in this comment where you say that you play nasty also, my friend, play implies that this is a game. First off, no one's, I mean, I checked for you, but no one's really checking for you. And secondly, you're not going to have TikTok in jail and you're not cute enough for anyone to want to smuggle a phone in for. Yeah, this photo. It was interesting to see that right up until my TikToks on Chris went viral, that people were still holding that 10-foot pole to Lizzo and that it didn't exist for Chris. In fact, at the time, which is literally just 4 days ago, people were on Twitter wondering why Lizzo was smiling because she should be canceled and also questioning why Chris would even be caught dead next to her. That is the power of power. And for that reason, no, if I was Lizzo, I would have not posed for this photo. He is relishing in indefinite power and in the coverage, camaraderie, and protection of other powerful people. She is not rich enough or protected enough to fail at simple optics at this stage in her crisis. In fact, if I was Lizzo, I wouldn't have posed for any photos that night. My theory here is that Lizzo attempted to use Renaissance, like many other celebrities during last week, attempted to use Renaissance as her sort of big moment, her big first appearance since News of her scandal broke. She was fully dressed up. She was with her girls. She was in the Parkwood Pen as a Parkwood guest, along with other Parkwood VIPs like Yara, like Jeff and Lauren, my fave, like Kelly, Carrie, and Megan. And I will say this, that Megan looks fantastic here. I'm just gonna pull that out as a separate post. Anyway, Chris is the only person that Lizzo posed with. Other celebrities posed with other people, but also took photos alone. Now, I'm not saying that other people didn't want to pose with her, even though sometimes it do be like that in this industry, but I am saying that she should have enjoyed the night away from official press and wire photographers and just had a really nice moment with her girlfriends and posted on social. I mentioned avoiding her because there's this video that's going around where it looks like Justin intentionally curves her, but in my opinion, it just looks like he didn't see her. And she kind of awkwardly turns away. I don't know.
What Ruby Franke said in court yesterday is shocking.
Yesterday, there was a shelter hearing, which was to determine where her 4 minor children should be. So she appeared from jail via a video call, and her husband, Kevin, was also in court. She turned on her kids and basically said that one of her 4 minor children had been essaying their younger sibling for years and molesting other kids in the neighborhood. She said that this happened, and then the 2 of those children would go on and abuse other kids. She said that the 2 kids used to play a patting game, but wouldn't go into detail as to what that meant. She said that when this child was 3 years old, they were watching porn. Like, how would they even have access to that? Is that true, or was it something that she is exaggerating, or is she just completely delusional, or did that happen, and why? And I don't know, like, she's crazy. And she said that this past May, this child admitted to molesting and abusing 20 other kids, including cousins and neighbors. Now, she didn't provide any proof of this. Who knows if this is just her twisted mind, but the judge said that because of these allegations, then this child needs to be placed in a home with no other children. Kevin sat quiet during this time, and he has given no further, no comments on any of this. There is a different court hearing that is set for today, this afternoon, so we'll see what comes out then. I don't know what to believe. I don't know if I believe any of what Ruby has to say. If any of these allegations are true, that's awful for all of the kids involved. I also don't trust what she says, though, because of her pattern of behavior.
The official 2023 Hunger Games. I look across at my partner, our eyes lock, and I say, don't worry, Kim, we're going to be okay. We're from District 10, so we know all about meat. Not to mention our mentor, Trisha Paytas, has prepared us super well. Kim says, are you worried about the career? I'm like, the career? You mean Chris Hemsworth? Of course I'm bloody worried. But I don't have time to think about that because an arrow flies over my shoulder. I turn around and Nicki Minaj is hunting me like a pig. And I'm like, Nicki, shoot me again. But right then a cannon booms, a cannon. And I'm like, oh, who died? Oh, it's Kanye West. Kim is like pretending to cry. Another boom, and not Selena Gomez, no. Who's next? Who's last? It can't even, oh, okay. Sorrows, prayers. Then, as the sword goes through my middle and I start to die, I turn around and see that the winner is Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he scuttlebutts the whole way home.